Richard, come sit right up front here, Richard.
I like to sit back with trouble.
Debbie Crumley's husband, I used to sit in the back row of the Baptist church every Sunday. As far back as we could get.
So we are on. So is our recorder on?
He just give you a thumbs up there.
Good morning, everyone. It is, what is today? The 17th of April. If you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. Did you have an officer report this morning?
I do. I have a couple things real quick. First, I have a little confession to make here. This file, Mr. Chair, was left at my door.
Okay.
And I thought it was an empty file. And I come back about a week later, and I realize it is a birthday card to you.
Oh, my God.
So I'm not going to ask for the specific date.
We found where it was lost at, right?
Was it you that put the date? Happy birthday, whenever the date is.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That was from the 2nd of February. Go ahead.
No.
Go ahead.
So, officers down. Yes, we lost four more, I'm sorry. I believe night before last. That makes the total for 4.5 months, right at 33. And I think you're probably aware we also lost two Marines in Afghanistan about 3 days ago. That makes the total for the year. Military deaths right at 12. So, Mr. Chair, I have one more thing that I don't want to wait till Commissioner's report. Take a few minutes. I've never...
Take a moment for those.
Huh?
I'd like to take a moment.
Thank you.
For the fallen.
Okay.
If you would join us for a moment of silence for the fallen.
Okay, I'll make this fast. I've never asked the pilot for a reproof or a correction, but this is the article. I have it up here, but I won't take that time. It just says that Boyce, after challenging Commissioner Gold on letterheads, what I have here for the public, these are just a small sample of the letters I've written since I've become commissioner. They all just single out one commissioner. Okay, except for House Bill 2379, which we all approved, and that's on my portion of the county website. So these are for you. Anybody, it's public information, go to the documents and see if any of them said Board of Commissioners. You were going to mention, we were going to say a little tribute to Jim Auburn. I'd like to add, subject to your approval, Mr. Chair, Ron Fowley from South Coast Lumber,
Okay.
if I may.
Sure.
Okay.
All right, so moving on, do we have any amendments to the agenda?
6B, I believe, should be taken out of consent agenda because we're supposed to appoint one person, is my understanding, and there were 3 applicants.
6B, the entire thing?
Well, it says appoint member, or excuse me, should be little b under B, appointments.
Okay.
I understand we're doing one, is that correct?
That was my understanding in reading the
Okay,
information.
So you want to remove 6BB?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other amendments to the agenda?
If I may, Mr. Chair. 6BC, approve Commissioner Gold's liaison to emergency services. I want to postpone that until we can have our goal setting workshop. That is probably going to, it might be next week, but more likely would be in early May. So I want to just pull that and table that and set for a later date.
So they're both, you want the 6BC removed as well?
6BC, that's correct, and I also have one more.
Go ahead.
6C, C, and D. Regarding Parks Director, changing name. I just want a little more time to understand that and follow that and visit with Director Smelzer and bring that later on before the board and see how much of a priority that should be. So I would request that we remove that from the agenda, at least for today.
All right. And if I could make a note for JJ, if we do like a 6B or a 6C instead of another A, B, or C, could we do like a 6B, 1, 2, 3? It just gets a little 6B gets a little confusing kind of a thing. So it just makes it a little clearer. All right, so we're looking to remove, you have another one?
When you're ready, yes.
Go ahead.
It can be under other, if that's convenient for the board. Otherwise, I would like to ask for board approval on a letter of support for the Highway 101 repairs and improvements it's not just to ODOT, but also through the Southwest Area Commission on Transportation, and then in addition, the Oregon Transportation Commission. I have a letter that I sent in late yesterday that I completed, again, subject to board approval. I think that letter needs to go out as soon as possible, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so you're wanting to add that into what part of the agenda?
Action item, maybe 8B, C. And I'm sorry I didn't provide a copy of that.
Okay, and this is about a letter?
To the Oregon Transportation Commission requesting immediate attention, Highway 101, particularly between Gold Beach and Brookings. I can read that letter to you if you like.
That's fine. For right now, we'll hold on. You have anything, Ms. Smelzer?
I just have a question on why we're not going to discuss the Plan Commission member at all today.
Oh, we just need to add it back in the agenda.
Yeah, we could just put it in the agenda rather than pull it.
Okay, because it said
That was
remove
my
it.
intention, because it was pick one member out of 3 applicants. It
You
didn't make
wanted to
sense.
move it, and Commissioner
Just
Boyd
out
said
of the
remove it, but
consent.
it's move it. Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure we don't delete that.
Okay, so we're going to move 6BB up, or where would you like to place that? Under not under presentations, but under
About
action items?
8BD.
8BD?
Be the last one on the action
How
item.
about 8C? Create 8C.
Okay,
Okay, great.
and that is the Planning Commission.
Also, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Boyce.
Also, I'd like to request a ballot vote on that, if I may. It's going to be more difficult for me all the time to vote for very, very qualified people, 3 in this case, certainly. And yet, in the interest of making an effort to avoid any hard feelings, if the board's amenable to that.
Okay. So I think I have all this straight. Have any other amendments to the agenda? Roll, please.
Mr. Gold.
I don't think we've had a motion yet.
Oh, I'm sorry, make a motion.
I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Have a second? I'll second that. Any further comments? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes.
Chair Pash,
Aye.
motion carried.
Public comments? Mr. Barnes?
Good morning, David Barnes. I just want to congratulate you on anniversary. I believe that either yesterday, today, or tomorrow is 100 days in office.
Oh, thanks.
So, and then on the downside of that, I want to point out that in those 100 days, this commission has either committed to spending, or proposed spending over $330,000. So, you know, you're $3,300 a day. Right up till now. Not all of it's been approved, some of it's gone away, but you're at over 330 grand in 100 days. So, thank you.
Appreciate the love. Thank you. Can we turn down these microphones at the podium, please? They're a little hot. Thank you. All right, recognitions and awards. So everyone knows, Summer has purchased a card for Mayor Auburn, and it is on the desk in JJ's office. If any of the staff here would like to write a personal note to Jim's wife, I'm sure it would be much appreciated. But as everyone knows, we lost Jim Auburn this week, and he was a good servant in this county for many, many years. Recognitions also to Karen Kennedy. Ms. Smelzer.
We just want to publicly thank Karen Kennedy for her service on the Plan Commission. She provided 8 years of service to that Plan Commission. Plan Commissions are a pretty difficult commission to serve on, so we're really grateful for the time that she has put in there, and we will be sending her a thank you.
And then we're going to also recognize Penny Hudgens.
Correct. Penny Hudgens currently is working in the Community Development Department. She works for Building Safety and Planning. Shelley Creighton is, who also works in Building Safety, has pretty much been training her and running a one-man operation. Basically, Shelley was doing by herself, and Penny stepped in to help her. So on behalf of Becky, do you want to just come forward to a little bit? But I've asked, so for those of you that don't know, Becky is the planning director. Shelley works in building safety. We don't have a building official right now, so Shelley's pretty much been running the show down there. And then Penny helps with both of those departments. Penny also worked in juvenile for a while, and I think some other areas in the county. She has 25 years of service into the county, so we just wanted to acknowledge her. And with Shelley being her SWATO supervisor right now, just ask Shelley if she could say a few words and present Penny with an award.
Well, I think that the county is very lucky to have Penny. She can pretty much run most of the departments, I think, give it a little bit of time. She's got great organizational skills, and I'm very blessed and lucky to have her because it's been a long haul down there. And she's just an amazing employee. You don't want me to pin that on you, I know, because I've got shaky hands. Her word, that should be gold. Thank you. And you're not a flower person, but I am. Thank you, Peyton.
Commissioner Boyce.
Well, I got here 6:30 this morning. You were already here. It's hard to beat you to work. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. Deputy Brian Brose is recognition. Ryan Brose. I'm sorry.
Ryan Brosey. So we're here to celebrate 5 years of employment with the Curry County Sheriff's Office for Ryan Brosey. He started out in corrections, and that's where he's at. He's been given many assignments and duties, extra duties that he does, and I don't know what we do without him. He takes care of all our transport arrangements for individuals. But like I say, he's here today, and we're here to congratulate him on this 5 years of completion with the Curry County Sheriff's Office. I know his family's here as well, and without family support, none of us would be here. So I just want to congratulate Ryan for his 5 years with service. I told him he had to give about a 3-minute speech at least.
It's not going to be 3 minutes, I promise. Thanks, Sheriff. It's been a very fast 5 years. I can't believe it's gone by that quickly. And I hope to be able to serve the community that I've been born and raised in for a lot more years to come.
Well, we're happy to have you, and we're blessed to have you.
Thank you for your service.
Ron Ballard. Ron Ballard. Ron Ballard. South Coast.
Go ahead.
Ron Fowler passed away day before yesterday. He and Alan Ford of Rosewood Lumber, 40 years ago, started their long-term efforts to employ a lot of people. He built an empire down there where they required to employ just less than 500 people, 180 loads of logs a day. I had the honor of taking a ride with him right after the Checo Bar fire, and he took me to his plantation that he was extremely proud of. Trees that were all about anywhere from 2, 3, 4, 5 feet, and a good portion of those burned. Tough day for him. It was a surprise. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but he will be incredibly missed. I also had the honor of working for his father in the summer of 1973, just a tremendous family. Brother Larry moved to Idaho. He was a logger of the family. I think he's doing okay. I'm going to be hoping and praying that some real good leadership quickly comes into place for those 2 mills down there. As you all know, how critical that is to our county, our economy, and just a tribute to his life and the tremendous things that he accomplished in his 40 years of running that mill. A moment of silence. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next thing on the agenda is 4E, proclaiming April Child Abuse and Prevention Awareness Month. Ms. Schmelzer?
Yes, we had a request from Jackie Antunes, I believe it came from Jackie Antunes, to do a proclamation for the month. She was going to be here to actually talk about it, so I'm not sure why she's not here, but basically we do know that we want to recognize Child Abuse Awareness Month. You've seen the blue spinners out on the courthouse lawn. That is in recognition of the month as well. Very critical. Jackie Antunes does a ton of work on this with Wally's House and through the DA's office. So we just want to actually ask the board to proclaim, or I should say pass the resolution proclaiming Child Abuse Awareness Month for Curry County. Sheriff, did you have anything to add?
No, not to that, but one other thing after you're done with that.
I don't have a problem. I would love to sign this proclamation and join our president and our federal government as well to proclaim this.
Do you want me to read it?
Sure.
Okay. So, whereas nearly 5 children die every day in America from abuse and neglect, and whereas a high number of children ages 0 to 17 in Curry County, Oregon are victims of neglect and abuse each year, and whereas President Donald Trump has proclaimed the month of April as National Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month, and whereas the victory over child abuse and neglect will not be achieved without the support of the entire community and recognition of the importance of awareness raising to decrease incidents of abuse and to support child abuse victims and their families. And whereas each April, Curry County's Wally's House, Curry Child Abuse Intervention Center, and other supporters of the child advocacy and abuse prevention movement ask the community to join the outreach efforts to reduce and prevent child abuse. Now therefore, the Board of Curry County Commissioners hereby resolves to proclaim April 2019 to be Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month.
I'm up for that.
I'm fine.
Thank you for that work, Director Schmelzer. Excellent.
That was Jackie Antunes. I'll relay that.
You made sure we heard it. Thank you.
Sheriff?
I just wanted to also say that the governor, excuse me, claimed this week as Telecommunicators Week for this across the state. So even though I appreciate that so much, and because they are our lifeline, our backbone, everything, I think they need to be recognized every day of the year, because without them we wouldn't have the safety that we have. They make sure when they send us to a high-profile case that we get home. So I can't say enough about our dispatch communications.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Council Huddle?
Sheriff, is there also a drug take-back event this month, or
I was going to bring that up.
Oh,
Go
thanks.
ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr.
That's
Chair.
all right. Go
I
ahead.
didn't know that.
Let the sheriff
Okay.
tell you.
Yes, there is, and we have participated in that for several years for the drug take back. We have a place that we set up in the harbor area and here in Gold Beach for those who wish to give back prescription drugs that are outdated, or say, for instance, somebody has passed away in their family and they have a bunch of medications that they just want to get rid of. They can bring them down to the Curry County Sheriff's Office on our harbor substation and dispose of those, and we will collect those and dispose of them.
I think that's April 27th, but
27th.
I don't
yes.
know the exact
Okay.
date. I
It's
don't
the
have it right now.
27th, yes.
all right. Sorry, Mr.
April
Chair.
27th. Yes, Ms. Cole.
Commissioner Gold?
Do you do that during the year also? Because I know when my mother passed, she had quite a few narcotics, and I went down to the police station and was able to get
Yes,
rid of those. So.
Even though it's a day that we select to do that, but anytime that anybody needs to bring some of those in, we will take them and dispose of them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. Presentations, personal action forms, Julie Swift. She was here a moment ago and she's gone now. Why don't we do this, Sheriff? We'll move you into her slot, and then hopefully when she gets back she can do her presentation. So if you want it at this time, we can do the canine presentation.
Absolutely. Here again, Sheriff Ward from Curry County Sheriff's Office. What I'm trying to do this year is to bring back a canine program for the Curry County Sheriff's Office. And we are here today to give a presentation on the canine program. The Curry County Sheriff's Office used to have a canine program back in the day, like early 1990s, late 90s, early 2000s. We had 2 dogs that were both cross-certified in protection and drugs. The canine program back then was disbanded due to the finances that were not being overseen properly, and then when the dogs got to the end of their service career, they were not replaced. It was a blow to the sheriff's office back then to not have a canine program because of the drugs, the ever-increasing drug problems that we have. The benefits of having a canine program are numerous, and there is overwhelming support from our community as it is. We haven't even brought this to the community yet, but we're already getting donations to help support that program. We are fortunate to have trained, certified deputies who already have experience and knowledge to make the program successful. Here today to give you a presentation on is Deputy Josh Teeter, Deputy David Verschel, and both were hired by us about a year ago from Nevada. Both were certified deputies and were part of a canine program in their respective agencies. Also, we are very fortunate to have Brad Alcorn here. He is a volunteer who retired from Fresno PD in California. He was part of their canine program, actually, what I understand, ran the program and became very successful. And down there it's a lot different from up here, but he'll be able to explain to you the benefits of having a canine program and what we can get from it. So he's offered his assistance and experience and knowledge in helping us get this program going. So at this point, I'm going to bring up the 2 deputies and Brad and to give you a presentation on that.
You and I had a conversation last week about another topic, but you mentioned something to me about a test or something that you did last week with a couple of dogs. Would you want to share that with us?
Yeah, we're part of SCENT, South Coast Interagency Narcotics Team, and they're having issues with finances up there to try to keep that program going because it's with Coos and Curry counties. But they have a canine up there that they brought down there to work with us, and because we've had some problems with a known drug house. The deputies watched vehicles leave from there. They developed probable cause to stop them, and as soon as they stopped them, the canine got out and hit on every 3 and got narcotics out all 3 vehicles. So that's only just a little taste of what we could do and to put a damper on the problems we're having with the drugs. And we all know that the drugs lead to other things, not only family domestic abuses and things like that, but all the burglaries and thefts. People want to steal to support their habits. So with getting a canine program started, we're going to definitely put a huge dent in our drug problems. So,
Thank you, Josh. Dave, Brad?
I have a PowerPoint.
Charles can.
There he comes.
Here comes the...
That's the brains of the operation there.
Turn these off so you
Thank
guys
you.
can follow along. I'll make notes.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can tap. Right here. Which one?
This on the keyboard.
Oh, right here. All right. My name's Josh Teeter. I've been here for about a year now from Las Vegas. Prior to that, I was with the Nye County Sheriff's Office as a K-9 unit. I had a dual-purpose dog, German Shepherd, him right there. He's patrol/narcotic. He got medically retired when I came up here, so I have him. And so we'll start. So, introduction, law enforcement agencies have utilized dogs for over 115 years. A single K-9 team is just as effective as 10 patrol officers. K-9s do 97% of their work through their noses. K-9s have approximately 220 million olfactory cells in their noses. We only have about 5 million, so that shows a lot. Police dogs are required to fall under stricter guidelines and trainings to ensure they have appropriate fit for the community they serve. We have to do training with them monthly. It's by state law, case law. K-9s can cover the same ground in a fraction of time when conducting searches. Little history. Police dogs were used between 1899 and 1901 in Belgium. 1907, New York City began to utilize police dogs. In the late 1950s, Baltimore started to implement K-9 units and had very successful results. Today, there are thousands of K-9 units and teams throughout the United States in both large cities and small towns. That's my dog. We're TV stars. K-9s are the most powerful tool to prevent crime. So, task cost effective. These are very beneficial to the county. Man hours saved by having a K-9 team present when conducting building searches, area searches, and drug searches. That way we can get patrol back on the road quicker to go answer calls for service. Instead, right now it could be someone on South County go all the way north. This will clear up searches way quicker because the dog knows powerful. They search for items such as evidence as well as criminals, drugs, lost individuals. Get patrol back available for calls quicker. K-9 units have been shown to deter crimes such as residential and commercial break-ins. My dog, when that dog's in the car, he switches. He go to traffic stop, make contact with a person, he's in the back just barking up a storm. People get that effect like, oh my God, there's a dog here. I don't want to do anything. I'm not going to go do anything because I don't want to get bit, all that stuff. They can neutralize high-risk situations, keeping an officer on active duty instead of losing him or her to injury or worse. That's the same thing. People won't fight us. Usually when they're under drugs, especially methamphetamine, they want to fight. They don't have a fear. And having a dog can neutralize that. Again, drug arrests will go up, which will create assets through the sheriff's office through drug forfeiture. We'll touch on that a little later. But there's a slide. I'll show you in a slide next. K-9 units send strong messages to the public that the sheriff's office is cracking down on drug offenses. K-9s provide added safety to officers on the street. More arrests are made safer without incidents, injury, or death. K-9s give criminals that psychological effect. So right here, this is from my old agency. Assets, the money, that's $20,000 my dog hit. Dogs can hit on currency if they have any odor. That will come back to the agency, whatever agency involved. It's just us, and we get all that. Obviously, we have to split it up and all that stuff. But that could help fund the department, help fund the county. Those are just through cars. Search warrant, that was found way quick. Instead of going around the house and having 10 officers search, the dog just found that quick.
Can I hate to interrupt your presentation.
Oh,
Just the second picture, top left.
That's meth.
Meth.
Yeah.
It's got the sparkle to it.
So yeah, that's from that first one where there's gun in it. So
Thank you.
those are all from traffic stops except for this one. That's from a search warrant in a house. So there's different dog breeds: German Shepherds, Malinois, Labs, Poodle, or Bloodhounds, and Spaniels. Our goal is to be using a Belgian Malinois and a Labrador. So German Shepherds, the pros to those. German Shepherds are the most famous and used police dogs. Fast, agile, intelligent, and have very high work drive. Their size and raw talent in the fields of criminal apprehension and narcotic detection are almost unparalleled. Officer superior protection to handler and officer on scene due to their dedication to their handler and task at hand. Know when to be aggressive and gentle. Perfect breed for dual purpose. Some cons to that are they're stereotyped to bite. Everyone's scared of German Shepherds. You see one, and a lot of people are stereotyped just because they're scared to get bit. My dog's sweet as you could be, unless he thinks you're attacking me, then it's not cool. German Shepherds are notorious for hip problems when they start to get old, and but they can be avoided with the research of bloodline. For instance, my German Shepherd, go out on a call. I have a violent person. I could put him, we train him in our patrol certification. He could be plots lay down, and he could be watching me, so while I'm patting down the suspect or handcuffing, if that guy turns on me, the dog's going to automatically attack. If not, he's sitting right there. He's not going to do anything until you tell him to. So that's a huge officer safety thing also. So Belgian Malinois pros, they're the second most utilized police dog. They're highly intelligent, high work drive, very agile. They got a strong frame that makes them durable for the grueling conditions that tracks put on the canine team. So the body out here, you got the woods, everyone, at least at nighttime, everyone runs from us. It's hard to see them. Dogs will be able to do the terrain really well. Don't have hip problems like German Shepherds. They're also fit for dual purpose. Cons, they're very hyperactive. So here's a Belgian Malinois. Our goal is to get one. We got one lined up, hopefully.
What do they weigh about? Look like 50 pounds?
Up to a bit. I think some weigh 90. 65, 90.
Thanks.
Then I'm going to switch over to Dave.
I'm Dave Rochelle. I've been with the Sheriff's Office since July of last year. I came from Las Vegas Metro Police. I retired out of there.
Could you step up to the mics, please? They're going to come out and tell you you have to.
Sorry. I retired out of Las Vegas and was looking for a home, and I think I found it here. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm hoping that you guys will support this K-9 program because it would really benefit the county. The reason why Josh has me talking about Labrador Retrievers is because I currently work a lab, and I have worked labs. I've worked all the dogs that Josh has mentioned, and I basically bring to the agency the ability of the training and the knowledge of how to work the dogs. Brad has all the legal ends, and he knows all the ins and outs of how to run the unit. I've just been hands-on with dogs my entire career. Since 1990, I've been working dogs. So Labrador Retrievers basically are everyone's friend. They're very friendly dogs, and it's a big PR tool, but they have great noses, and the only drawback to a lab is you don't use it for protection. You don't apprehend anyone with this dog. You can track with this dog, search and rescue, narcotics, cadaver, those things, but you're not going to make an apprehension with that dog, nor would you want to. But I'll let Josh carry on the rest of it because he was doing good, and then I'll step down later. Thanks. You did awesome.
So, just like he said, they're people pleasers. These are dogs you want to bring to schools and show the community out and about. People pet them. They're less aggressive breed. They're agile, strong, and intelligent. Cons is they're not animal protection. Say they got significant health concerns once they get older, and they're single purpose. But you could use them dual purpose, it's not protection. So liability, you got accidental bites cause the greatest trepidations because they often lead to litigation in which town's sheriff's office and individual officers can be found responsible for damage caused by a dog bite. That's rare. It's all about obedience. The more you train with obedience, the more accidental bites are less going to occur. Regular obedience training conducted by the handler is necessary to help prevent accidental bites and behavior issues. Canine only bites when absolutely necessary. Police dogs are considered as a non-lethal force option. So agency liability, you got the respondent superior. An employer is responsible for the actions of employees performed within the course of their employment. The principal becomes liable for the actions of the agent, even if the principal did not directly commit the act. 3 considerations generally: was the act committed within the time and space limits of the agency? Was the offense incidental to or of the same general nature as responsibility the agent is authorized to perform? Was the agent motivated to any degree to benefit the principal by committing the act? Vicarious liability. Legal dictionary definition is the imposition of liability on one person for the actionable conduct of another based solely on a relationship between the two persons, indirect or imputed legal responsibility for acts of another. For example, the liability of an employer for the acts of an employee. So there's 8 liability areas for the department: negligent appointment or failure to appoint, handler section, and dog selection. That's the most important decision, and who's going to be the handler, who's going to be in charge of the program. Failure to retain, monthly review of K-9 team. We have to do logs. Every day we train, we have to do logs. Obedience, patrol, whatever we do, we log it. Failure to entrusting the K-9 handler, potential for use of force. You don't want to put a guy in charge of a K-9 that's just going to make bad calls and go let the dog bite people. That's not what it's about. Failure to assign, K-9 use is out of scope, exceeding the dog's capability, unavailability, ability. Failure to direct, on-scene supervisor knowledge of a K-9 deployment. Deployment consists with the written agency K-9 policy. K-9 handler has ultimate authority not to deploy K-9. When we show up, we decide if it's the right situation to deploy the dog. We created a policy that's very strict on what we can do as a K-9 handler or K-9 team. Failure to train, the 3 issues of that is standard training and certification. Here in Curry County, we would get trained in both Oregon State and the California CNCA because we're right here on the border. Failure to supervise applies to all supervisors from the trainer to the sheriff. So low man at the podium told me all the way to the top. Failure to discipline, management must track all training, certification, and deployments to ensure you don't have misbehavior handler or dog. So they're pretty much auditing us all the time to making sure we're doing everything correct. The dog's getting trained, we're getting trained, we're not doing anything stupid. So cost, you got a couple different things. Purchase K-9 equipment, vet, the wages. There's a FALA, that's federal law. I'll go over that in a bit. So usually a cost of a K-9 is around, dual purpose is about $11,500. And that's trained, ready to go. Lab spaniels, they're about $7,700. It's all depending, it's approximately, these aren't exact figures. For a patrol K-9 course and the narcotic detection K-9 course, those are about 2-3 weeks apart, sometimes longer depending on where you go. When I did my initial one, I did 8 weeks for narcotics at the Utah post and then 8 weeks patrol. So they're pretty long. So I went to Town and Country just to get an estimate on how much it would cost for medical, the vet, and it's about $946 a year, but you got some of them are 3-year boosters, one every year, so it's not an annual thing. Mini Pet Mart said they'd already donate the dog food, which is about $60 a month per dog. They're huge supporters of dogs, obviously. It's Pet Mart. K-9 equipment, these are usually all one-time purchases, except the bite suit and bite sleeve. Those are just, once they start getting holes in them and tears, you don't want to use them anymore, because if they got holes in, dog's teeth gets in it and rip out the dog's teeth, that's just a nightmare. Those are all one-time purchases though. You got the vehicle K-9 insert. That is for one vehicle, and that includes to get take out the back of it, and then you get a 2/3 kennel, so you still can transport your bad guy and still have the dog in there safely. And there's a hot and pop, which will, if you need to, automatically release the car door open if we need it, or controls the temperature in there for the safety of the K-9 also. If it gets too hot, it'll turn it on, kick it on, roll down the windows, etc. Approximately $36,000 to start up the unit, and that includes the dog and the training and all that, all the equipment. I contacted some of my people when I was down in Las Vegas, and we got dog food already covered. The hot and pops are already donated, medical bags for the canine, and bulletproof stab-proof vest. So annual cost for the canine unit approximately is $10,000, and that's just an estimate. Could be less. That's including salary, overtime. And this is the biggest thing about canine units. This is the Fair Labor Standards Act. This, you have to compensate for the bathing, brushing the dog, the handler, for having the dog at home or whatever. So my old agency, it goes however the sheriff and the command wants it done. But at my old agency, instead of getting a half hour every day of overtime, we just either before shift or after shift, we got an hour for the 4 days. So that would be our cleaning the dog, take care of the dog, do all the maintenance with the dog. So that just all depends. But this is a must. It's federal law. It has to be implemented. So I think that's... Yeah. And then just where I got the information.
So real quick on the Fair Labor Standards Act, that came up. It was a Garcia law or act that occurred, and what happened was there was an agency that had a canine program that was working for years, and there was never compensation for the handler for the off time, and that dog went home with the handler on the off time. So then the handler came back on that agency and said, well, I need to get paid for this, and ended up winning a lawsuit saying, hey, I need to get paid for all my spare time that I use with this dog because it's your dog, it's not my dog. So what this did was the government stepped in and said, yes, that's true. So the agency has to come up with some sort of compensation, whether it be overtime pay or shift differential or something to cover that. And when we had talked with the sheriff, basically, as you get promoted through our agency, like a detective or somebody else, you'll get a 5% increase or whatever. That also would cover that. So that would make it safe for the county and for the sheriff to know that, hey, this handler can't come back on us in 5 years and say, I've been working this dog for 5 years and no one's been paying me for it. Because that, whatever the stipend is that's agreed upon by the agency and the handler is set in stone, and then that covers you from any liability as far as that goes. Okay. And Brad, he's up to speed on all the current legislation and how to run everything. And you want to?
Sure. So good morning, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Brad Alcorn. I am a Curry County resident now, and I'm glad to be here.
Budget committee member?
Absolutely. I am a retired police officer, and I did spend approximately 35 years with the Fresno Police Department. And during those 35 years, I had the pleasure of having a wide variety of assignments. I worked patrol. I worked almost 15 years on our Special Weapons and Tactical team. I worked our Violent Crime Suppression Unit. I worked at various assignments and investigations ranging from sexual assault, robbery. Spent 8 years in homicide. I worked on a career criminal team. I worked on multiple federal task forces. I worked major narcotics. And I wrote wiretaps. I've done a tremendous amount of large-scale investigations, and including police corruption. With that being said, one of the assignments that I had in my career was to start a canine program at Fresno PD. The chief selected myself and another officer, just like these two young men, and we started our program. We started with 8 dogs. And back then when we started our program, they were single-purpose dogs. They were protection dogs because our city and our agency had a need to protect our officers and our community. We had a surge in violent crime, and we needed those tools out there. And so we started with 8 dogs, and I worked my dog successfully until he could no longer work and his service life was over. I moved on in my career, but I stayed in touch with our program, and today our program is extremely successful. It's doubled in size. Most of our dogs were dual-purpose dogs. They were either explosive dogs and protection dogs, or they were protection dogs and narcotics dogs. One of the things about our program that's important to note as I look at alternative funding solutions here is asset seizures. Our major narcotics unit has a dog assigned to them specifically to aid in asset seizures. They do package interdiction, they do road interdiction, and they assist in all of their major narcotics investigations by locating not just the drugs, but the residue from drugs that's left on money. Package interdiction, for instance, the way that works is the sheriff forms a relationship with FedEx, UPS, Post Office, and even the Coast Guard. And through that relationship, he's allowed access to packages. And the handlers are trained to identify certain characteristics of a package that might be consistent with a drug dealer transporting money or drugs. Those packages are set aside, the dog runs the packages, the dog alerts on the package, a search warrant's written, the investigation begins. It's not uncommon to find $25,000, $50,000, $75,000 in a package that's being sent UPS or FedEx. And it's drug trafficking money, and it's taken through asset seizure protocol. So I also want to point out that from Humboldt County to Coos County, there's no drug dogs. There's nobody working interdictions. And I think this is a tremendous opportunity. We have two guys that are very experienced, and we have a sheriff that's trying to do everything he can with what he's got to police our county. And we have an opportunity here to create a program that could not only self-fund itself, but could also provide additional resources to be used for other training and other equipment in the agency. I'm more than willing to volunteer my experience, my training, my services to the Sheriff's Office and help with anything the Sheriff needs to get this program up and going. And I just would really encourage you to strongly consider this opportunity. I think it will be extremely beneficial, not only from a funding perspective, but also if we can make an impact through these dogs in drying up some of the narcotics resources in this community, those people are going to move on. They're going to go where the drugs are readily available and easy to get. And I know in South County, in the harbor area, I went on a ride along with a couple of these guys, and there are drug addicts out there. It's evolving. There's an evolution taking place, and I can see it. And now's a great opportunity to step in and be proactive rather than reactive when it gets out of control.
Anyone that thinks that crime and drugs in this county aren't going to continue to get worse, I think is not seeing through clear eyes. I have a couple of questions, though. Firstly, I'd like to compliment the deputies on their apparent on the presentation, firstly, but also their commitment to this program. You both seem like you're extremely committed to the program, and with your histories, that gives me confidence in this. One question I had on this: is there any additional insurance bridges that we have to meet on this through, for liability for the county or through the Sheriff's Department? Do we know about that? So
I don't believe that there's any additional liability insurances. However, speaking to the issue of liability, to minimize liability, it starts with, number one, transparency, number two, extreme oversight, and number three, developing a department policy that is extremely restrictive. In other words, there's a policy in place where these deputies understand there are circumstances that you don't deploy your dog, and it's black and white. There's no discretion involved in some of those decisions. And then the maintenance of your training records and the quality of the training that you're doing on a weekly basis, the scenario-based training that you're doing and putting in, and the evolution of that, of course, and putting and implementing those things in place with that oversight is going to minimize liability. I can tell you from my own experience in handling a dog, number one, the dog saved my life more than once. Number two, the dog prevented me from using deadly force multiple times. So it saved the lives of those being apprehended. One of the things not touched on here yet is another purpose that these dogs can serve. When we have a lost or missing person in our community, those dogs are a valuable tool, a valuable resource for that. They don't just go find people and bite them. They find people. They search for human scent in a geographical area, and they lead the handler to those people. And that's a valuable resource to have here. And I think this program, the dog is a force multiplier, whether it's a protection dog, a narcotics dog, or a search and rescue dog.
Commissioner Gold?
I just have two questions. If you were to find some money or whatever, where does that go?
What's the process?
Yeah, what's the process?
So, and I've talked to our district attorney about this. So the district attorney's office becomes involved, and there's a legal process that you go through to actually seize that money. It's part of the actual prosecution, if you will, that the DA becomes involved in. And I've talked to him about that, and his response was, right now we don't have any big cases going on like that. We haven't had any, and part of the reason we haven't is we don't have a program like this in place.
So we don't know what would happen to that money at this point?
Well, it would get booked into evidence, and then once it was adjudicated and a judge allowed the seizure of the money, then it would be put into a fund designated by the county.
Okay, and I guess it could help pay for this program, I would assume.
It would pay for training and equipment.
Yeah, and then I have one other question. If we were to put this program in, is that part of the budget at this point?
I think the sheriff would have to speak on that.
Captain McDonald, the Sheriff's Office. We have in our budget proposal, we have asked for a pay differential for 2 K-9 officers that's in there. I want to back up for just a second. On the asset forfeiture stuff, there is a whole process. It's changed numerous times in the state of Oregon. But right now, let's just say we seize $100,000 cash. We don't get all of that. There's a formula that it gets dispersed. Part of it goes to different places throughout the state, but the county does keep a portion of it. So if it's, depending on how it's seized, is what the actual net is to the county. And then Commissioner Pash, your question on the liability, they hit on liabilities in their presentation, and just as a clarifier on that, those are liabilities that we currently already have. Each one of these deputies, when we put them out there, the county has the vicarious liability of, we have these law enforcement officers out there. We give them guns, we give them tasers, we give them pepper spray, we give them batons, we give them cars. Cars are deadly force, their firearms are deadly force, their tasers, their batons, their pepper spray, their beanbag shotguns, those are all less than lethal. Well, the dog is classified as less than lethal. And when we hand them a firearm, we give them the knowledge and the tools to use it, and we give them the training on when to use it and when not to use it. And so it's no different with a dog, only most of the time, dogs are the scariest non-lethal force you're going to run into. I mean, so it's liabilities that the Sheriff's Office already currently has. We already have, which with each deputy that we put out in the field, we already carry those liabilities and they carry those responsibilities. We're just giving them another tool, and another tool that can be used as a whole for our community. So,
thank you.
If I may just add a couple more things to kind of illustrate the potential of asset seizures. In my research of canines being used in Oregon, and specifically this area, we reached out to Medford, the Medford area. They have the MADS unit, which is the drug and gang unit. There's one dog there, one team, if you will, that was responsible and involved in $3.1 million in asset seizure in cash.
Okay.
So that's an example of, that's Medford. It's a different geographical area, but it's an example. There's also some grant funding for methamphetamine-related programs. I think the state, I saw the state had $400,000. I think it was Jackson County that got $36,000 in a grant to aid them in that. So by implementing this program, some of those things may become available.
During the NACO meetings I was just at as well, they were talking about some grant funding for opioids as well that are going to be coming out later in the year.
And I think you probably read the newspaper article of the interdiction by the Coast Guard off the boat on the northern coast of Oregon, which was 160 some pounds of liquid methamphetamine. If there's an interdiction on I-5 in Medford and I'm a drug dealer, am I going to run my drugs through that interdiction point, or am I going to run them down 101?
Amen to that. Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to give a report later on the Commissioner comments. I had the privilege of spending time with U.S. Attorney Billy Williams, and the Sheriff mentioned just a minute ago about multiple discoveries and arrest, and how that was just kind of a small part of what law enforcement is up against. And if I could repeat anything that U.S. Attorney Williams mentioned, is they're, as hard as they're working on opioid and the whole marijuana and black market issue, they're scratching the surface. And so his last comment in an hour and a half was basically do anything, everything you can to support the local. He didn't use the word or the term crime fighters, but that's what he meant. And you can start at the DA or the sheriff, either one, but both. And he just really gave that strong support and encouragement. One quick question: you mentioned Humboldt, Coos County. So that basically, you mean Del Norte County and Curry County don't have K-9 units?
No.
Okay, and that it just seems
not
like
not that are working specifically drugs.
Okay, and so that's an investment. It's an absolute investment, I think. Best way to look at it and characterize it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Like I've said many, many times, anyone that doesn't think that the drug dealers don't know that we don't have someone on that border, we don't have deputies 24 hours a day here, they know the hours that your men are not on duty. They know that we don't have dogs. And I have always and always will value anything that will not only help protect the citizens of this county more, but enhance your abilities to protect your deputies and yourself. So as far as I'm concerned, I'd like to move this forward quickly to bring this to a vote here in the next BOC meeting.
I have some questions.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just have a few questions for you. So,
To me or?
to the group.
Okay.
So, you know, we don't really have a good track record for retaining employees very long. So what happens after we invest the money into training that individual and the dog, and the employee moves on, let's say a year later? Do we have to reinvest in all that training again? And do we get to keep the dog, or does the dog go with the trainer?
We buy the dog.
Okay.
Curry County will own the dog. The one thing good about, like with Dave Burschel's dog, he's buying that dog for himself back from what it was a search and rescue dog, which can be cross-trained in for narcotics very easily. He's going to give us that dog. Basically, it's going to belong to him, but we're going to be able to use that dog and save us a bunch of money right off the bat. So that was just that's what we talked about.
Right, yeah. I would just basically use the dog.
Yeah. I wanted to clarify again on asset forfeitures. You know, when Brad said he talked to the DA, and the DA says we don't have the resources or whatever, we don't have any of those cases. But we are part of CENT, South Coast Interagency Narcotics Team. And through them, they have the resources to do the asset forfeitures. They have their district attorney, they have a person that really works on all that. And any money, and I've talked to the person who was in charge of that, who's actually moving back into as a patrol captain. They're trying to keep that CENT viable. That's why I've asked Julie to look at some funding that the county can put forward with that, maybe from the state marijuana monies or whatever, but just enough for us, the county, to stay involved with CENT. And when I was talking to the guy that was in charge of that, he says, when we do mostly asset forfeitures, that money, most of the money should come back to the county. They'll be part of that. If they do the asset forestry, they do the work on it, of course they're going to have part of that. But let me give you an example. I think it was maybe 6-7 years ago, we did a seizure of what he was talking about. It came through UPS. A dog hit on the package. It was $90,000 in one package. A week later, another package showed up, $90,000. So all that money was seized by scent. But I don't know that our county got much out of that. But you know, if we're involved within our dogs and we use them to come down and help us, I would assume that we would get a pretty good chunk of that asset forfeiture.
Okay, thank you. Julie, another question?
I just want to comment on the funding of it. So as Sheriff mentioned, we're working on a grant for the CINT membership or the fee. All Care is working with us on a grant on that one. And when the state did say that counties would get a portion of that marijuana money, a portion of it is supposed to be going to law enforcement. In our county, we're just putting it in the general fund. So this is a way to help fulfill that commitment, or at least the intention of where that money was supposed to go. And then lastly, there was a home in the county that was, I believe it was seized by law enforcement, or somehow in looking at the property list of the 900 properties the county has, we do have one that it was said that when that property is sold, the proceeds shall go to the Sheriff's Department. So I think now is probably a really good time for us to look at that property, get it marketed, get it sold to help fund this program.
And another thing for the public out there that might view this, this is another reason to approve the TLT tax, because a good portion of that money will also go to the Sheriff's Department to help fund these kind of efforts to protect the public in this county. Did you have something else, Commissioner Boyce?
Good reminder on that. Very good. Whoa, where was I going? Oh, go back a couple slides if we could, just maybe 1 minute, maybe two, Mr. Chair, to where it talks about the potential lawsuits for the trainer of the dog. I just want to be able to tell the citizens that this is a bargain, and this is not somebody just getting overtime pay for taking care of their dog. I mean, that's, you know how taxpayers are, and to the extent that could be even partially liable, just clarify that maybe so that we have a good, reliable talking point to explain.
When it comes to doing the job of being a canine handler, I can tell you that in my 35 years, that was the most demanding job that I had physically. It was more so than the SWAT job. That dog is, for the dog to work well with you, there has to be a bond. So you've got to spend a tremendous amount of time with the animal. You and the animal have to become almost one, if you will. And that doesn't happen by throwing the dog in a kennel and, you know, going and doing your personal business. You spend a tremendous amount of time with the dog. The dog, while it doesn't necessarily require a lot of care, the handlers are going to put in a tremendous amount of care with the dog. And every handler that I've ever been around has always gone above and beyond whatever is necessary to train the dog. So you do obedience at your mandatory training, but I did hours of obedience every day with my dog because I made a commitment. Like, I'm sure these two, you can see the commitment in their eyes. I made a commitment to do that, and they're going to do that. The time that they're going to spend in this dog is an amazing amount of time. And then the mandatory training that goes on is weekly. And it's a documented weekly training where they have to meet certain standards each week.
Very helpful. Thank you.
I've actually owned one of these back in the late 80s. I owned a retired one, and they were amazing animals.
My personal dog right now is a Belgian Malinois. I had her a puppy and trained myself.
Commissioner Boyce, also, when it comes to the lawsuits and if it's no different between a dog handler and a regular deputy. If we have negligent retention on a deputy, if we have a deputy that's always getting use of force complaints and we don't do the proper discipline and we don't do the things that we're supposed to do as managers and supervisors, we have an inherent, we put the county in an inherent liability situation. It's the same thing with a dog. If we're not paying attention to our handlers and they're not doing what they're supposed to do and they're not doing the documentation and we're not ensuring that they do the things that they do, then we again put the county into a situation of liability. So it's our jobs to ensure that they do their jobs, and it's their job to ensure that they do theirs also. So it doesn't change the liabilities that we have. It just means that that's another thing that we have to make sure that our guys are doing what they're supposed to do, and so that's why we have myself and the sheriff and our sergeants, and so that's what we do every day anyway. So it adds another tool in our toolbox, and it's a big tool. So
Thank you.
Yep.
So we want to bring this back as an action item to vote
We
on?
can, Council, would this come back as an order approving a program, or how would we do that?
I got the sense that it's going to be presented at the budget, and that you've got it worked into the budget, and that this is just kind of a precursor. I mean, how long does it take to actually get a dog? I mean, what I saw in the materials was this was going to be kind of there was a estimated funding amount that would be needed. Some's coming from donations, but you're having it in your budget. What's your plan, Sheriff?
That's correct. We're going to have a K-9 program. This was just a presentation to make you guys aware and support it. We're going to try to do the best we can for outside funding, donations and things like that. Like I said, we haven't even advertised this yet, and we've already got about $1,000 worth of donations just boom coming in. But I wanted to make the presentation, and I want to go public. This is what the Sheriff's Office is going to do. I want the drug dealers and the people who use meth and other illicit drugs that give them to children, I want them to be on notice. We're going to put a bite in it, so to speak.
Literally.
But other than that, yeah, there may be some additional monies that we may have to ask for from the budget committee, but like we said, we have budgeted in for a 5% increase for working out of classification as a K-9 deputy to two of the handlers. They've been working hard already. They've been making contacts. They've gotten donations for the food. The food bill alone is going to be incredible because it's all going to be donated. Medical kits, it's already been donated. Some other things, the hot spot in the cars, I think that's going to be donated. Hot Pops. It's incredible. I know Julie put it out on social media one time because there was a picture of a gal that committed some crimes that was on methamphetamine, and she said, would you support a K-9 program in Curry County? And boom, it just went kind of viral, and there wasn't one person who said no. They all said absolutely, this is something that's needed. So in order to fund this, to get it going, I'm not saying that July 1, we're going to get, if the budget passes, we're going to have a K-9 program. It's going to take a little bit of time to get the dogs here trained and all our policies in place. So it just takes a little time. I just need to know I have support from the commissioners in county to do this. The DA is going to have to play a big part in this as well. So we'll have to get him up to speed on, about asset forfeitures and things like that. But we already have something in place. As I said, begin with, when we did have a K-9 program, it wasn't overseen properly, and Brad hit on that. That's why it must be done properly from the start, because the oversight on it was they weren't getting their they weren't following the Fair Labor Standards Act. The handlers came back and said, hey, I want to do this. Well, the sheriff at that time says, fine. They had to pay him back all the stuff, but he took the K-9 program out. We don't want to see that happen. We want to make sure it's running right from the start.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, would we want to consider vote of support today?
Sure. If we'd like to have a vote of support, just an oral vote of support.
This is good news. I'll happily make that motion, Mr. Chair. Support the K-9 program for the Curry County Sheriff's Office.
Have a second?
I'll second that.
Call for the roll.
Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Strongly aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
We're going to have to, because of union rules, we have to take a 10-minute recess. No, but that is the rules.
It's actually this stuff.
Thank you. I can, right?
You
Could a
could.
private individual do it?
That's how Dan got the levy passed, and
Yeah,
Josephine
that's what
took
we
his
oughta
own
do.
money and did it.
Take some donations. I support TOT. All right.
Was there? I'll have to look at that. This past week?
Are you the new guy?
Boyd Allen.
Oh. It's not, what's his name? Let me do it that way. Okay. All right. We are back in session at 10:21 a.m.
Back to 5A.
Yes, we're going to 5A with Miss Julie Swift, who has now dawned us with her presence.
Julie Swift, Payroll and HR. What I sent you were personnel action forms of people that have been hired over the last few months. It's part of the personnel rules since when we had the administrator and they could sign off on the PAFs and didn't have to come before the board. So this is just notifying you people that have been hired and people that are new to the county. Now that we don't have the administrator anymore, all those actions will come before the board, so I don't have to do this anymore.
There you go.
I just wanted to make one other comment. You removed the Parks Director job description from the agenda today, and I just want to let you know, previously the description was Parks Director / Community Service Coordinator, and with the split of Juvenile and Parks, all that job description is doing is taking the Community Service Coordinator piece out of it, so it's just making it the Parks Director.
I have a question for you because it was, don't I recall it was under community development previous to being tied in with juvenile? Wasn't the Parks Director's job, and
Nope.
shouldn't that be probably more into community development department, since we're on that topic?
It was always with juvenile because juvenile, the parks piece had the community service piece to it also for the juveniles assigned to that, and when that was kind of Jay Trost's
Right.
baby, and when he left, juvenile just really didn't
Yeah.
want to deal with
Yeah, I actually
parks
talked to Jay
anymore.
about that yesterday or a couple days ago. But you know, I think parks we're promoting tourism and all that. I think that is probably a better place. Would be under community development, economic development, kind of an area to look at.
So we did discuss that when I first came on board this year, about which departments should basically fall under community development. And at that time, there was some discussion about putting parks under community development, but the Josh Hopkins, the director or coordinator, did not want to come under community development at that time. So when we did the org chart, he was left out of it at that time.
So he's standalone right now.
I'd like to maybe look to bring it back under that.
I would agree.
Anyway, so if you don't have any questions on any of those personnel action forms, my work here is done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Were your ears ringing?
Yeah. Josh Hopkins,
Hi, Josh.
Kerr County Parks Director. We've gone down the route previously of possibly looking at moving it back over to community development. Not necessarily something the Parks is really interested in at this time. It's one of those things, I've never heard any real benefit to that. We're kind of operating okay, and Ms. Belzer is the Parks Supervisor over as Director of County Operations, so she is still available to use. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, 5C, Mr. Christensen, Roadmaster Report. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Board of Commissioners. Richard Christensen, Curry County Road Department. And we're here today on vacating an unused right-of-way up in the Flores Lake area, Pacific City. And we have 75% of the abutting landowners to an undeveloped piece of property right-of-way that this county has that has no plans of ever doing anything with, that we would like to vacate back to the adjoining property owners.
County Council, have you looked into this as well? And I mean, as if we were to do that, is this a clean transaction? No reciprocity going back? Can anyone step in on the county I know sometimes when properties are, I've purchased properties off the courtroom steps, and they have a time period that they can come back and retake that property.
Sure. This is a little bit different than that. This is a vacation application. So in other words, there is on paper a county, I think this might be an alley or a road, and essentially it's not being used by the county. That's the long and the short of the roadmaster's report. The process here is a property owner abutting the piece of right-of-way that they want vacated submits an application. It goes to the Board of Commissioners to direct the roadmaster to bring back a report to see if this piece of right-of-way is needed for any county purpose. The roadmaster has looked at it. It's really not needed for that purpose. So the roadmaster is giving you the report. There's no need for this. And then to answer your question about people pushing back on this, we have a public hearing scheduled for, I think, May 22nd. That'll be the next step. So this is an intermediate step in the vacation or right-of-way procedure, and the next action will be May 22nd. So now the roadmaster's report is in the record, and then the hearing will be May 22nd. People can argue about that. They can argue about the necessity of this, but there will be no redemption period for someone to take this back. Right, and that is in a tax foreclosure sale. Those are the kind of things the Director of Operations is kind of working on currently with me and the assessor. Is that will be a different process. So,
and Roadmaster, just so the record is clear, you've looked into this matter, and I just want to make sure that there is no benefit to anyone. You're not related to anyone on this property. Those kind of things that somebody could make gain from your decision.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no relation here to anybody I know. Okay. And on the AGRS is my report, my complete report.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. Just clarification, Councilor Huddle, on the May 22nd. Is that just going to be on this Norman Bulldog applicant? No other properties? And I'll tell you why I'm asking that. It is just one.
right. So what happens is the certain people within, I think, 200 feet. I'd have to check the exact statute, but the notice goes out to these people who could be affected by the vacation of that right-of-way to say whether or not they have an interest that needs to be protected and whether they oppose it or not. And so it's just a hearing for people in the area of this vacation to come and tell the commissioners. So one property.
Okay. So the reason I asked that, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sure.
I've had 3 different residents contact me coincidentally about purchasing county property. One is at Forest Lake, one is at Hunters Creek, and one is, don't remember the address, somewhere in Harbor. So I'd like to, when all else fails, call a workshop, right? But give them an opportunity to come here and present to the board. Maybe even, I think all 3 of them are able to make offers and work with the assessors. And so what would be the right approach there to give them a chance to present to the board and the public?
Well, I'd like to use time well spent. So if we can do a workshop and have everything on the same topic would be great, if that's possible.
Well, I think what we've been doing is we've been having them start with my position, and then seeing does it have to go to a sheriff's sale? Is it something that we can sell? I mean, there's you have to look at the value of them, and there's how the property was acquired, and then we take it from there. And if it's one that goes to the board, we bring it to the board.
So I'll delay the request for a workshop, and I will get them in touch with the Director of Operations.
And then if we can get that work done in time, that we could add them to that, I see no problem.
It might generate some other interest in other properties. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Christian.
All right, so we are going to just quickly over the consent agenda. We're looking to approve the minutes from March 27th, April 3rd, April 9th, business meetings, and on the 27th workshop. Appointments to reappoint members to the Coos Curry Douglas Board. We've moved 8B on the consent agenda to 8C. as an action item, we have removed the liaison. We've got on C, we've got job descriptions, the Veteran Service Officer and his additional duties. We have an order adopting a Veteran Service Officer job description and reclassifying the Veteran Service Officer. We've got the Parks Director and C and D have been removed from the consent agenda. And we have higher orders from the Assessor's Office, the Road Department, actually the Assessor's Office, Cindy Ashby, Road Department, Ray Berkey, and Road Department, Laura Lee Snook. Have a motion, please?
I move we approve the consent agenda as amended.
I have a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Any further comments? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes?
Chair Pash.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Okay, we're a little early for the public hearings. Imagine that, we're running early.
Made your day, huh?
Yeah. Ms. Colstrom, if you are watching the live feed, maybe you could come in.
If I could, Mr.
You'll have to come back.
You're right, because we've
Okay,
noticed a
because
particular
of
time.
public.
I think if you got the roadmaster here, you could probably get him in and out of here and
Yeah, why don't we do that? Let's take action item A. And that would be the chip and seal oil bid.
Good morning again, Board of Commissioners. Richard Christensen, Curry County Road Department. Yes, we're looking for you to approve giving Roadmaster signature authority to purchase $382,000 worth of chip seal oil. This oil is for the work we were unable to complete last summer. We're going to complete it in June, plus the oil we're buying for our next fiscal year projects. We're buying everything ahead of time so we don't run into the problems like we had last year where we couldn't purchase our resources.
Commissioner Gold?
Is it cheaper in volume when you do it all in one big?
No, I don't think so. It's the price
Just
is
the
the price,
convenience
is
to
price.
have it there? Okay.
Yes.
Commissioner Boyce?
How do you store that? And I assume it's in 50-gallon drums. You know, that's...
No.
Huh?
This is thousands and thousands of gallons of oil.
Oh, my
And
God.
so it's trucked over daily for the amount that we need that day, and we utilize it.
So you don't even have to store it then?
No, if we have to store it, that means that some part of our operation malfunctioned, like a piece of equipment. We were unable to complete that project that day. At that point, we either have to store it, which we don't have the capability right now, or we have to ship it back, which would happen to be like $500 in shipping fees. So it's really important that our program runs smooth.
So you're tying it up for an indefinite period of time?
Correct.
Okay.
So we're going to be tied up for about 7 weeks this year.
So it's like buying fuel on the futures market where you pay for the fuel now and then they bring it as you need it.
We lock it in now.
That's what I mean.
But there's in the contract there's language that the price could be adjusted per
Really?
the rate. Yes.
So what's the benefit then to buy it in bulk if they're not going to guarantee the price? That would be the benefit to them to lock it in at a price.
Is to lock in the resource. This resource is utilized by all 34 of our sister counties and cities, and there's like 4 different purveyors.
So this would stop the county from having a shortage of oil then if
Correct.
it was all bought up.
It would make sure that our project would go as scheduled.
Is there at least a sliding scale of a variable of how much they can raise or I'm sure lower the price?
I'm not sure. I'll have to get back to you how that works.
Okay. Do we need a motion on this?
I would think so. It's an action
Yeah,
item.
go ahead.
I move that we approve the chip and seal oil bid and that we give signature authority to Roadmaster Christensen.
I have a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further comments? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Since you're standing there, let's talk about the Gardner Ridge emergency stabilization.
Yes, the recent storm event we had, April 5th through the 8th, we sustained major road damage all over the county, but this is our worst event. And when we arrived on site, we had already lost half our road, and we were able to hire a local contractor that I've worked with in the past with Brookings, that I knew all the local contractors, that they were able to come in emergency with equipment and materials to stabilize that slide to not lose the entire road. So we were able to, for $24,000 and change, McLennan Contractors rip-rapped the bank, installed 240 feet of storm drainage pipe, and realigned the road so to allow for logging traffic and local traffic to get by this slide. It's a one-lane road right now with traffic control where people could access. So without this work being done in the time that we did it, we could have lost the whole road, and logging activity would have stopped, and also local people living down there would have been isolated with no alternate route. So it was a real successful project, and I feel that the contractor was very efficient and effective, and we have a really good price for saving that road.
And are they going to get it back to a 2-lane road here in the near future?
We're going to be working on that and looking for funding. It's that road to repair it, we estimated will cost $300,000 to $400,000 to put in a retaining wall system. And so we're going to look for funding. So I'm prepared to let that be a 1-lane closure due to the low traffic counts for maybe a year or two, and try to find money where we could do pay 10.27% of the repair. So if it's a $400,000 project, we'll be paying $50,000 instead of the $400,000. So I'm going to try to do that, and we'll see how long it takes. But if we have to, we will have to use the road funds to repair that road.
So you mentioned you have traffic control there. What type of control? Because if it's going to be out for that long where it goes to 1 lane, of course you're going to have traffic going either direction. What is the traffic control?
The traffic control will be where the slide area is protected from vehicles going in there, and there'll be a stop sign on either side.
Okay.
That'll say wait for oncoming traffic. So people can see each other, and if there's someone coming, just stay where you're at. Once they're through, then you can proceed.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We have a motion.
I move that we approve the Gardner Ridge Road emergency stabilization.
Second.
I'll second.
Any further comments? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, so it seems we've still got plenty of time. Council?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the previous action item, you asked the roadmaster if we were getting a lock-in price, and he said he thought there was some ability to adjust. But I reviewed the documents, and I had reviewed the documents before they went to the board, and I didn't remember any adjustment options in the contract, and I still don't see any. So I know, you put the roadmaster on the spot asking that question. I mean, not by any means to put him on the spot, as it were, but essentially I'm just not sure I agree with his analysis of the contract that they could adjust their prices if it went up. So I think we're good with the prices that you approved.
So what you're saying is basically the language of the contract does not state that they can move the price.
I didn't see any language in there that said they did, and if they tried, I would try to persuade them otherwise based on the contract we have. So
very good. Mr. Christensen?
Yeah, I'm just going by what my engineering department is. They alluded to the fact that there was some room in there, and I'll find out how that works. It may not be in the contract.
Okay.
That
not in the contract.
Well,
It's hard to enforce, put it that way.
Correct. And so I'll answer that and get it back to you on email.
Thank you, sir.
But we'll fight the good fight if things try to go off the tracks.
Perfect. Thank you, Council. Commissioner Gold?
Just knowing that prices of oil are going up right now, I think it's a good thing you're getting it in there.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on, professional service contract. Ms. Schmelzer, Lost Creek Dam.
Yes, this is, we've discussed this before. This is a professional services contract with Steve Byerlin. His company is known as Oregon Strong LLC. And as you know, he's done some work for us on the Lost Creek Dam rogue fisheries recovery issue. The board had discussed a service contract for some work he had done in the past, and this board made it very clear they did not want to pay for past services. So what happened was Josephine County agreed to pay the first $5,000 of all costs incurred, which takes care of previous encumbrances, and then this would be for the coming year, $5,000 to represent us from this point forward. What happens is Josephine County has agreed to pay that first $5,000. This would be Curry paying $5,000, and if Jackson County joins the effort, they would also pay $5,000. If that $15,000 gets exhausted, then we would have to come back with a new contract. So this is $5,000 to cover Curry County for up until April 17th of 2020.
And I have spoken with the commissioners or the board chair at Jackson County, and he has relayed to me that Jackson has not made a decision to join the letter even yet, that they hope to get to it in the next week or two.
Right.
I'm sure.
I was going to say, so it doesn't, it also doesn't pay an hourly rate. I think there's some concern about how much time this would actually consume and how expensive it could get. So it's just a $5,000 flat rate for the year.
Commissioner Boyce?
Well, you're traveling to Jackson County with Mr. Byerlin. I'm sure
yes,
didn't hurt, and I'd be very surprised if they didn't support this fully after the week time you mentioned there. Originally, I had a little bit of apprehension how we were approaching this, and because he's been a lifelong friend of mine, and I feel very comfortable with this now. Public, I think, is getting a tremendous deal. The county has really potential long-term benefits on this, and so we'll just keep pursuing and following and encouraging Jackson County. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I would also like to say, I'd like to say thank you publicly to Josephine County, Lily Morgan, for getting in the forefront of this and making that offer. I thought it was very bold of the commissioners there to step forward and do this with the limited knowledge that they have, trusting this board and also Mr. Byerlin. One further comment on this is this hit the floor of the House yesterday, and I believe it was a 44-3 vote in favor.
55-3.
55-3, I'm sorry, in favor of moving this forward for the Senate. So this looks like the work that Mr. Byerlin has done, along with Representative David Brock Smith, and the work that he's done to get this to the floor. I just applaud them both, and I believe that all three of our counties will not only see much work done to repair the tourism and fish losses that we have suffered through this county and other counties through the Rogue River, bring tourism back to this county, bring our fishing guides, their business back, and all the ancillary business that will bring into the county as well. I'm just excited about the whole thing, and we look to move forward against the Corps of Engineers here in the coming weeks. Commissioner Boyce?
Uniqueness to Oregon is our forest and our salmon runs our fisheries, and so those are two things that we're all a little bit lax in trying to fiercely protect over the years, and so this is, and there's some other bills that I can talk about later real quickly that I think are a little bit related to the whole salmon and trout enhancement program, which started back in the 80s by then State Representative Bill Bradbury, went on to be Secretary of State, and one of them is an incubation process instead of the hatch boxes. We can talk about that later, but this is a great time for Oregon, and to have the state support on this, I'm sure it'll get through the Senate, and then we'll anticipate the governor signing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, so can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Barnes. I'm Kind of got a little buried there.
Yes, you did. Thank you. David Barnes. I've read the Byerland, I've read Steve's report. I've read the report that it was generated from, which was the, I don't know the full name of it, but it was the Spring Chinook and restoration. It's the result of a study that they've been doing over the last 10, 15, 20 years. ODFW, I read in your resolution on this that ODFW has not opposed this or has not argued any of the points in this. That's because there's no new points in it that weren't included in their plan. They've been working on this for years now. They've been studying this. And, you know, nothing against Mr. Byerland personally, but all I see is he added some numbers to this. I don't understand why we would be paying a volunteer to do volunteer work. We have, you know, he wasn't asked to do this. He did this on his own. We have people on our budget committee who spend hundreds of hours a year. Last year you had on the budget committee there was a forensic auditor. That was his expertise. He put in between 150 and 200 hours working on your budget last year. Are you going to pay him? Ms. Hunter spends a lot of time working on veterans issues every year. Are you going to start paying her? I think it just sets a bad precedent that we start paying volunteers, especially for unsolicited work that they're doing. You know, I've spoken to people around here about this, and quite frankly, you know, people who I've spoken to are appalled that we're going to pay $5,000 of taxpayer money for something we didn't ask for, and there's no, you know, or what is our intention here? Are we going to sue the Army Corps of Engineers? If so, we don't need Mr. Byerland, we need a lawyer. We need his report, and we need a lawyer. You know, to say, how would you know when he's run out of his $5,000 if there's nothing in there about an hourly compensation, if there's nothing like that? Are you just going to, is it on Mr. Byerland to just say that, you know, okay, well, I think I've done $5,000 worth of work now and I need more to keep going? It's just far too, this is just way too open and way too undefined, and I think it's a mistake, and I think it's a bad precedent to set to start paying volunteers, especially for unsolicited work that they put in.
Thank you.
That's just my 2 cents.
Okay. I will say this in a comment. You won't need to comment further, Mr. Barnes. I just want to make a comment that this was brought to the attention of everyone through Mr. Byerland's research on this. People didn't even realize that the Corps of Engineers was no longer even managing or doing a minimal management of the Coal Rivers hatchery. The Corps of Engineers questioned Mr. Byerland's research and said that they doubted its validity, and then they sent some engineers to the hatchery and found millions of dollars worth of damage, validating this research. This will potentially bring millions of dollars to this county, and the research that Mr. Byerland has done, if he were to hire outside counsel to defend this, I am sure that they would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars hiring experts to do the research so that when they bring their case in front of the court, that their case will have validity and strength. Mr. Byerland is not just a volunteer in this county. He has voiced himself as an expert of over 45 years, not only in Rogue River fish and as a fishing guide, but as a legislator in Salem. And if I recall correctly, and please don't quote me on this, there was a time that Kitzhofer would not even let a fishing bill go through his office without Mr. Byerland's stamp on it. He was also the president of the Oregon Fishing Guides Union or organization for years and years. So to just qualify him, and I know I also have a relationship with him personally, but to just qualify him as a volunteer, I think undermines his expertise in this field, and his research is invaluable to this county moving forward to offer the Corps of Engineers a bill for their contract, and it's a simple contract law, for their contractual failures in the contracts that they signed in 1972 to guarantee this county and its constituents that they would take care of those hatcheries, to put the dam in, to build those hatcheries and take care of them so that we would enjoy, our children and our grandchildren will enjoy coho salmon coming down that river, spring Chinooks, whatever type of salmon that they're charged to bring down that river, that they would do that in perpetuity to the numbers in those contracts, whether we had a drought, whether we had a flood, no matter what. We'll bring you 13,000 fish back to that hatchery every year, and the number dwindles to a 0.38 of 1% this year. They're bringing back 0.38% of their contract. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little off base here, but to categorize Mr. Byerland as a volunteer here and not an expert in this field, it just kind of pushed the wrong button with me.
I'm sorry, but there's a lot of experts in their field who volunteer their time.
And I'm not saying there aren't.
And, you know, and Kitzhofer isn't the governor anymore, so, you know, I just disagree with this, Mr.
Well, the bill that was just brought to Salem through Mr. Smith, David Brock Smith, was worked on through with Mr. Byerland, and it just passed 54-3. So evidently he does have some expertise in this.
I'm not questioning his expertise at all. I'm not questioning that at all.
Well, you said Mr. Kitzhofer was no longer governor, I understand, but the now governor is going to face, again, Mr. Byerland's work on this, because there is liability and there's a lot to be done with this.
Like I suggested once before, then maybe the idea would be that if we get something, that we give him a percentage of it.
And we may do that, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a lively discussion, and I love these times because I think we grow and learn, and we start the process or accelerate the process to problem solving. I'm thankful that certainly Josephine County saw the value of the investment in Mr. Byerland. You know, it was just there's a lot of us who believe the Army Corps of Engineer establishment there at Coal Rivers just simply sat with their feet up on the desk. So when he approached and challenged them on this out of the right kind of emotion because of what is done to the fish runs in Southern Oregon, 2 days later, Mail Tribune comes out with an article describing and defining what the Corps had, their lack of responsibility. The $15,000, if Jackson County kicks in, that is going to be a drop in the bucket with the travel that he'll have to do and has been doing and will do. I do still put him under the volunteer category. And when you have problems to solve as big as this county has, you better find the right people, and you better incorporate them into the plan and the team and the concept of how to work and overcome. And you know, it's John Hitt, it's yes, Connie Hunter. You know, I hope to live to see the day when we have a few extra bucks and we could say, yeah, you went above and beyond just a general volunteer, and we'd like to offer this, and those days hopefully are coming, and that is if we do our job. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, so I'd like to, do I have a motion?
I think I made the motion, didn't I?
Well, yes, actually we had a motion and a second, and then I forgot that Mr. Barnes had asked. So any further comment on
clarify
this?
the motion and who seconded, if you would, Mr. Chair.
I think it was you that made the motion.
Okay.
So the motion was that we accept the contract, fisheries contract, that Ms. Schmelzer has brought forward for Steve Byerland and his Oregon Strong LLC. And we had a second from Commissioner Gold. Any further comments?
Oh, I don't believe I made the second.
JJ, do you have any record?
No.
You got a record,
All right,
JJ?
so can I have a motion, please? Let's start over. Why don't we just start over? May I have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
A second? I'll make the second. Any further comments? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
I'll have to say no because of the contract being a little loose for me.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Yes.
Motion carried 2-1.
Better day for the salmon, Mr. Chair.
All right, we're going to 8C, or I'm sorry, 8B. Commissioner Boyce?
Yeah, there's been some concerns and questions. I think the contract has amended. Looks good to me. Up to $5,000 for Mr. Hitt. Not sure when or what time he would be returning. But we would have him on, I think, about a third to even up to half his time on planning downstairs and helping us get caught up down there. We still have a lot of work and reorganization. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, just clarification. So
Okay.
this is a second contract. So,
Yes.
so this is not amending the planning one. This is a freestanding contract.
Okay. I thought that was the same thing, but thank you. I appreciate that clarification. So, but it is our expectation that he's going to be working with planning, and then the other half of his time would be on special projects. And I can give examples, but I like the new contract as you outlined, up to $5,000. It's based on $35 an hour, which is raising him from 25. But we're starting to divert away from the $50 and $55 an hour contracts, with the exception of Roadmaster and Laura Lee with the background she has. And that was his call.
Mr. Barnes?
Mr. Barnes again. This contract is written as for Mr. Hitt to go and explain the consumption tax on Saturday before the at the Curry Voices Forum. I don't understand what's to explain. The ballot question is pretty self-explanatory. It's going to be 2 to 3%. There's been no exemptions or what's being taxed decided upon. You expect to collect between $1 and $3 million on it, average it out to 15 or $1.5 million, and you expect that the residents of Curry are going to be paying half of that. What's there left to explain except that it's $65 for each person who lives in Curry if you do this? You've already spent between $2,000 and $4,000 rushing these two advisory ballot questions on. These are survey questions. They're not ballot questions. Mr. Hitt stood here before you over a month ago and said that this was very preliminary, needed more work, needed public workshops, needed public input, and now you want to give him another $5,000 to perform a survey for you. I'm appalled by this. I mean, your spending is just really, like I said before, $330,000 in the first 100 days. This is incredible to me. You know, Commissioner Boyce, the consumption tax was your idea, it was your proposal. I believe it's on you. Your job as a commissioner is to go out and defend it to the people, not to hire somebody else for $5,000 to do it. I'm highly opposed to this. You know, we now have 3 full-time commissioners. We have a full-time director of operations. We have a full-time planner. We have a full-time economic coordinator. You know, I don't mean to question the validity or the merit of any of your spending, but you're going through money quick around here, and as a taxpayer, it's kind of shocking to me that that everybody up here ran on fiscal conservancy, and yet you're blowing through $3,300 a day. I'm opposed to this. You know, Commissioner Boyce, this was your idea, it got rushed through. I don't know what else is Mr. Hitt going to explain to us? There are no exemptions. You don't know what's going to be taxed. What's to explain? You know, why would you pay somebody $5,000 to come out there and do it?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's been many have heard me speak the activity of the full legislature this year. I had my fingers crossed that they wouldn't come up with a sales tax, and that Curry County might be able to be the first one that could actually do that. And I think Mr. Hitt reported a couple months ago or 6 weeks ago that 40% of that would come from outside the Curry County paying citizen tax base. So the House bill is, I think it's 3427. I have a letter here it's being opposed by the Roseburg Chamber of Commerce, but I think it's probably going to be too late. So I don't think there's going to be a need for Mr. Hitt to go to the town hall on Saturday, because with the amount of work, almost pleading with the previous board that I did, help me at least get this to the voters. Anything we can do to show the public how this could benefit us for law enforcement, paying back the road fund reserves, tourism promotion. I've got a list here, and it's just going to be a moot point because the state's going to beat us. And I did everything humanly possible to avoid that. And so if that happens and that House Bill 3427 goes through, We lost that window. So does anybody have a better idea how we can raise money? We know we can't support county services on property taxes only.
Mr. Barnes,
we may not need Mr. Hitt, and so I don't know what I'm going to do about Saturday yet. I'd like to attend. I may call in, but I don't have anything. I think it's a waste of time to promote a Curry County consumption tax. And as far as the exemptions go, non-labeled foods, pharmaceutical, medicine. So if the poor folks go out and buy bananas, no tax. Everybody pays. Yeah, so, and 40% of it comes from tourism, 15% goes into, but like I say, I think it's a waste of time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Barnes, you've had your comment, and I've given you a wide latitude in these meetings, but we need to move this meeting along. I've got a public hearing waiting to happen here, 2 public hearings actually, and you've made your comments on this, so if you would please stand down. Thank you. I would like to say on this, because he's not going to be needed for the April 20th meeting that you've just stated, honestly, I'm just reading this, and if you would give me a week on this, we'll have another meeting to approve this next week, but here's one of those things that I know I can read through this.
I think that's fine, Mr. Chair. I've decided not to ask the board for approval for Saturday. Okay. Even I had 3 days ahead of time. I just don't think it's going to be any need, because I think, again, the state's going to, and all that money that we get charged to our tourists is going to leave Curry County. It's not going to go to law enforcement.
So then we're not
frustrating for me.
I understand, sir. So we're not going to have a motion on this then at this time.
That's fine.
So I'd like to stand down on C because we have Ms. Colstrom here, and it is the time for our public hearing. We will move forward with C after and move forward with 7A, supplemental budget, payrolls. Ms. Colstrom.
So this is opening the public hearing that was advertised for these 2 supplemental budgets that I'm presenting today, and I'd just like to know if there's any public comment open for hearing.
None?
Hearing none, I'll present the supplemental budgets. Supplemental budget number 8 is payroll adjustments per the 2018-19 negotiated payroll with the unions or board actions for payroll for this year's payroll that was done during this fiscal year. So it's several pages of supplemental. The Exhibit A is showing the transfers to cover the negotiated payroll or other board actions. For the first 2 pages are general fund, and the revenue to provide for this is to increase our carryover balance in revenue to cover these costs. And then the next 4 pages are payroll outside of the general fund, and some of these are transfers from the general fund, which is increasing that carryover balance once again to cover these. And some of them were taken care of within the fund itself. Are there any questions on any of these transfers? Or are you still just looking at it?
One moment, please. Stand
Go
by.
ahead.
At this point, at this moment, I don't have any. Commissioner Gold?
I don't have any questions at this point.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you. No.
None.
So there is a resolution for supplemental budget number 8.
Need a motion, please?
I move that we approve supplemental budget number 8, Exhibit A.
Have a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Any further comments? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried.
It's that one.
I think it's his.
JJ's.
The second supplemental budget is supplemental budget number 9. It's transferring from the Road Capital Improvement Fund to the Towers Capital Improvement Fund for the microwave system upgrade that's in this, that was approved by the board.
Correct.
So I did I kind of rounded up the amount that was in this upgrade quote to allow for the kind of legal advertisements and stuff besides just purchasing the equipment. So Exhibit A is the side that's the Towers Capital Improvement, and so it brings in a transfer from the Road Capital Improvement Fund, and then other materials and supplies of $1,000. I'm not exactly sure if those are legal ads or whatever else you might need to do to get this contract going, and then also the capital outlay itself. Exhibit B is the Road Capital Improvement, and it's moving money out of other materials and services and into transfers to the towers. So this is a resolution also for the budget to be modified as detailed in Exhibits A and B.
Commissioner Gold, do you have any comments or questions?
I think it's very important that we take care of the towers issue, and this will allow us to do so.
Okay, do you have, Commissioner Boyce, do you have any questions for Ms. Kallstrom?
No, I'll make a motion when you're ready.
I have none as well. A motion, please?
To accept the supplemental budget number 9 for towers.
Second?
I'll second that.
Further comments? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, Ms. Kallstrom, thank you.
If I could, after the meeting today, I would appreciate it if all of the commissioners sign the resolutions so it can get over and get recorded, so I can get it back in time for it to be in this budget document.
I usually try and sign everything on that day, so
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving back to action items, BC.
Okay, so...
Weird to say.
Right. So BC is Plan Commission. We had 3 people apply for our Plan Commission spot. Mr. King sent an email and rescinded his application.
I saw that.
So we have 2 to choose from. One is, they're both in your packet, but we need to choose one for the 2-year position.
Okay. Give me just 1 minute because I got to go all the way back and find it because it's in the
Yeah, I have to find it too.
in the front part.
So it is for the, to appoint one at-large member, 2-year term. The applications we have are from Carl King, which was rescinded, and then Michael Lane, and then Frank Rumrell. Not sure I'm saying that last name correctly, but the term would go until April of 2021.
Just getting to them now. So.
While you're looking, Mr. Chair, I'd requested a ballot vote if we could.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Does everyone have some paper to write on?
We can dig something up.
We can't afford the extra paper now.
Maybe you could just, this thing,
Oh,
sorry.
he's got a piece.
Yeah, I got three.
Oh, Court's got a whole yellow pad.
Rip that into
Sure.
3 pieces.
There's for you and Commissioner Gould. You know, we're always discussing whether we should have 5 or 7. We should just have them both. Do we have an even number, wouldn't we? We'd have 6 instead of 5?
Well, the board recently amended the ordinance to change the number of plan commission members that we used to have. So I forget what the number was and what we went down
number
to.
though, right?
Right.
So we have 5 now. We have 7, John?
Commission now, it used to be 9.
Okay, so we have 6 presently, and this is adding the 7th, or,
Right.
okay.
Who's going to count these?
Council Huddle can
There you go.
be fair.
Do you want?
Does everyone give me one, or?
I haven't yet.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I'm
So
still looking, yes.
Good, all right.
Just reading the app.
Sure.
All right, I'm going to ask, can we,
So how many we're voting for one, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Voting for one.
Very good.
can we offer to have an alternate? Second place is an alternate?
I'd have to look at their
I don't think they have
bylaws.
alternates.
I don't think they have, yeah. So what happens is they have they actually have text in their land use code that describes how the plan commission is formed. And the board did amend that actual code about a year ago, this time of year actually, I think, last year. And they did not have an alternate in there. So we would have to go back and amend the code in order to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Give your vote. And then council, if you would please, you can, because it's a ballot like this, handwritings could be recognized. If you would please dispose of them properly after.
I thought everything had to be done in public.
Well, it is a public vote. They're hearing the vote.
Right, the record will reflect, so again, I think the record will reflect that there were 2 votes for Michael Lang. And that's, I think, is public. And then as far as who cast those votes, we're not doing a roll call vote, we're just doing a ballot vote. So we have 2 votes for Lang, which I think constitutes an appointment for him.
Okay.
So you're, if I may,
Yes.
you're content that we just did and acted properly?
Right. In other words, we didn't. I don't believe we have to do a roll call vote on an appointment. We've done a ballot appointment, and the commissioners wrote down the names of their appointees. Each commissioner wrote on a piece of paper. I received 3 pieces of paper. 2 of those pieces of paper had Lang's name on them, which I considered to be votes for Lang, and 1 had the other. I didn't memorize it. So I think the record will reflect there were 2 votes by the Board of Commissioners today for Lang to be appointed to the Planning Commission.
And I've seen the prior board to my being sworn do exactly that as well.
Twice. Yes, thank you. Twice in 2018, or 18, I'm sorry.
Is there an objection to the way we did that?
No.
Okay. All right. Moving on to 9A, short-term rental housing. Ms. Schmelzer.
I put this on the agenda because there has been some discussion about our housing crisis, lack of housing for employees, residents, etc. So I talked to Ms. Crockett how our zoning ordinance currently regulates short-term rental, and it doesn't regulate short-term rental. So what you have sometimes is a county will say you cannot have any transient, or transient meaning short-term rentals, unless it goes through a permitting process, such as a process to be permitted as a bed and breakfast. In our county, we don't have such a code. So what we find is a lot of the second homes or homes that are available that could be used for permanent housing for people is actually put on reserve and used for Airbnbs or transient housing options. So I just have this on the agenda, I guess food for thought or some direction as to whether you want a workshop on it or us to explore this further. And that being, should the county be looking at an ordinance which does not allow additional transient housing without going through an actual bed and breakfast permit? There's not much we could do about the hundreds of Airbnbs that are out there right now. We do know that they're out there. If the transient lodging tax passes, we'll be able to collect a tax on them. But looking forward at housing options for people. Are we putting too much of our housing stock into that transient system, and therefore that's causing us the housing shortage that we need for people? So just looking for some direction on that.
So you're saying right now in this county there is currently no permitting or licensing required for an Airbnb or bed and breakfast?
For an Airbnb, that is correct. Now, if you were going to go a full-blown bed and breakfast and come in and get, I believe it would be a conditional use permit, that's a different process. That's also when you're renting like a room at a time. But if you're renting your entire home, such as we see people do on Airbnb, we do not have a process right now for those.
You asked for direction. My direction would be that everyone that rents property to the public at large for any reason for a vacation rental should have to be licensed to do that, make sure they're properly insured to do that, make sure that the property that is being rented is legal to rent as far as the utilities, the services in that property, and of course then they would be on the rolls for TLT taxes as well, and we could then gauge more accurately our TLT taxes and where this county stands on housing. That would be my preference. Commissioner Gold?
I agree with your statements, but I'm wondering if these folks that already have these non-licensed places, would they have to be grandfathered in?
So,
Council?
No. We can create a new law and make it apply prospectively. We couldn't go after them for what they did in the past. We couldn't say, in the past you didn't have a license, we have a license now, but we can make people get licenses now.
Okay. Commissioner Gold?
I think that's probably really wise, especially if the TLT passes, because otherwise you would have no way of knowing what's going on out there.
Well, that's, I think the first step in this would be inventorying them all. And once we have an accurate inventory, then planning can go forward with licensing once we have an ordinance to that effect. That would be my hope, is that we could move forward immediately on this. Let's get it on the as an action item, that we can start to move forward with an ordinance that everyone that rents properties in this, it has to be fair. You cannot ask a hotel or a motel to charge a TLT to people and his next door neighbor is an Airbnb and he gets a pass. That's not fair, and I think we are charged to do as much of that as we can, so I'd like to move that forward to get an ordinance on this. Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Talking to Lincoln County Commissioner, you used the word epidemic up there, that unregistered or unlisted, uninventoried, as you just said a minute ago, bed and breakfast. And for the TLT tax, I'm a little puzzled, maybe fuzzy, on where we are with the RV. I was talking the other day to one of the presenters, and they felt like we were fairly well organized there, but I'm not sure about that. So this might be, to your point, accelerate this, start that inventory. I think should be very helpful.
And there's another way that, again, I think we probably are going to need another code enforcement officer And this is things that code enforcement can deal with immediately. Commissioner Gold?
I was just going to say, relative to code enforcement, a lot of times these places that are rented out are way out of code, and this would, help take care of that problem.
Do you think a lot of operators will come in on their own when they see that we're trying to get this organized? Okay.
Ms. Schmelzer?
Planning Director Crockett is here now, so in case Becky, I'm not sure if you have anything you want to add or some comments you want to make.
Nice sunglasses.
Apologize, I missed the whole thing. I just wanted to let you know that there's actually a lot of information out there on short-term rentals. In fact, the University of Oregon just commissioned a study, and the study includes looking at places including Curry County, City of Brookings, Port Orford, and Gold Beach. Essentially, when the time this was done a couple years ago, they determined that about 2% of our housing was being taken up in these short-term rentals. Since then, you can expect that it's probably quadrupled that. What's really good about this study that's been done is it looked at the difference between using a zoning code for enforcement and for setting regulations, and it also looked at licensing. So it compared both of them, and it also looked at collecting fees, which was a fairly significant part of this study. And I do apologize for missing the discussion.
Well, I'd appreciate a copy of that study if you could get it to us.
Absolutely.
And then we can make a more accurate decision. But I would like to move this forward in the coming weeks. Let's move this forward.
We talked about it, and I think 2 years ago the board tried to do a countywide license, and it kind of didn't go real well. But maybe it's time to look at that and incorporate it in with this effort here. Or do you want to discuss that down the road, or?
Well, I think we need to move forward with the ordinance because, again, here's a case that then our hotel owners are going to look at us and say, well, why do they get a pass and I don't on the TLT? I mean, if we're going to expect the constituents of this county to support a TLT tax, it has to be fair to everyone that rents property for vacation or short-term rentals in the county. It has to be fair that way. That's my 2 cents. Mr. Melzer? Business-wise.
So about a month and a half ago, the board directed staff to look into business licensing. So just as a separate note, I just want to make sure that you're aware that we are still working on that. The Economic Development Coordinator is actually working on the business license right now.
And I don't think the license fees in this are going to be exorbitant. It's just a way to get everybody to the table equally so that we know the accurate inventories of this, and they can be, the TLT tax will work equally for everyone.
Totally agree.
Helps us provide better services for them.
Sir.
Thank you.
All right, so Ms. Schmelzer, if you don't mind, we'd like...
I don't mean to interrupt. We're coming up on the noon hour, and I was wondering if you considered doing the executive session, because at 1 o'clock I have a very important meeting that I have to attend on a conference with OSSA, and then at 2 o'clock I have a very important meeting. You have to be at the hospital over there with Curry Community Health in the hospital.
Good. Well, if you just give us a couple minutes to finish this, then we'll do that.
Okay.
Great. So, Ms. Schmelzer, can I get a motion, or do we need a motion even just to direct you to
just a direction.
It's
move
unanimous.
this forward and get this on as an action item in the coming weeks, and during that time we can review Ms. Crockett's presentation that she had for us.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So, at this time, why don't we do that? We'll go ahead and move to executive session. Executive session will be per 192.6602D to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations. So this meeting is in recess.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you. We need
The Economic Development Coordinator, Commissioner Gold, and I have been discussing education, youth development. Commissioner Gold can probably report on Monday's meeting. I'm not sure if you were there or not. I was on vacation, but I just wanted to let you know I did reach out to a known grant writer who is very skilled at writing grants for youth education. And she did get back to me, and she said she charges $60 an hour. there's a big USDA grant that could help fund some of our internships, youth development, things of that nature. So it's something we'll want to look at and see if that's something we're interested in. I need a little bit more information on the direction that the school districts want to go on that. Also asked her about grant writing to help the port, and she does not, that's not her specialty, but she is trying to find somebody that would be able to help the ports with some of their grant writing as well.
Good.
As far as our strategic plan goes, the deadline to apply respond to the RFP is not over yet, but we've had, I would say, about five people asking questions and direction. Are we okay with small plans versus large plans and things of that nature? So we have had good responses so far to that. Building official, I would like to bring that forward to the board as an action item next week. We do have somebody, an interested party. He is going to be meeting with staff on Tuesday night to see, how they respond to him, and start that relationship. Based on that response, hopefully we could appoint him at Wednesday's meeting. So I'll be bringing that back if everything works out on that one. And then I apologize, Commissioner Boyce, you wanted a goals discussion on this agenda, and I missed that, so we'll be putting that on the next one.
Terrific.
And then
by the way, that could even be the first Wednesday in May if you want to do that. But next, I don't know how busy we're going to be on the 24th, other than the workshop.
Yeah. So then just to update, the workshop next on the 24th is at 6 p.m. The first thing on there is PEG Access. It's a presentation by Carl King. If you remember, he came in, he said he wanted to present to us, so we scheduled it for the 24th. And then after that is the SASO workshop. Okay. So they start at 6.
What time is the BOC meeting?
There's a meeting earlier that day, 9 a.m.
So how are you going to handle JJ with overtime and so forth? That may get pretty late.
Well,
Yes.
why can't we bring him in at noon? Didn't we discuss that?
Well, we have a 9 a.m. meeting.
So let Summer cover, or Brenda. Why not? And in addition, if I may, maybe we need to talk about that or think about that. But also, I'm asking for a 5 o'clock ahead of SASO, just in the interest of people coming here. Let's see, what did you just reference there?
We have PEG Access and then SASO as the workshop.
Why don't we have that one come in at 5, and then we're also working with the vets. We're also working with ODOT. It's kind of hard to schedule a week ahead of time and get them here, but and there was one other.
I know on PEG he was originally
How much time do you think he needs?
Carl will have about a half hour.
Okay.
But initially that conversation was supposed to be at a 2 p.m. workshop, and then we told him it was a 6 p.m. workshop. We can see if 5 would work for him, but he is scheduled at 6 right now. Because the workshop is supposed to start at 6.
I don't know how that got ahead of the SASO deal, though, because that was where we tried to nail it down that one specific time. Then you don't have people waiting that are just interested in whatever and we also, as far as the veterans presentation, we were looking at possibly getting the new director from Roseburg here, the VA director. So, and I'd love to have a report from ODOT, with what they're dealing with. So should we have a presentation maybe during the regular business meeting at 9?
Well, if you're looking for ODOT to do a presentation, they can do that. That should be done at a 9 a.m. meeting. Yes. And then if you're introducing the VSO,
why I was kind of thinking they might. Okay, yeah. That's fine. I'll see.
The reason why PEG got ahead of SASO is because we told PEG quite a while ago, this is the day we're going to put you on, but they were put on for 2 in the afternoon. But then last week, or maybe it was the week before, the board agreed to allow SASO to come in for an evening workshop. So we had to cancel that afternoon one with Carl and push it to an evening one.
I was never doing the 2 o'clock. I think that's just because that's the normal time.
Yeah, it was always on our schedule. It was on our schedule that we agreed to. That's why we had a 2 o'clock schedule.
Well, again, Mr. Chair, I want to do what's best and easiest for the citizens, and so 5 o'clock is the time sequence. I think that would be fairly well organized, and I would assume that state folks would have
5
no
o'clock
difficulty.
for what? For the Sasso?
No.
Oh, for King?
Yes.
And then the other workshop starts at 7, right?
6.
Or 6.
So there may be a half hour in between there then where we have...
We'll fill it with something important.
He sings.
Huh?
You sing, right?
Oh. I got friends in low places.
You know, the other thing is just to continue on with 6 o'clock as scheduled. That's, Carla's expecting 6 o'clock.
Yeah, then we bump a bunch. I don't know. I'm sorry. Okay. Then we got a bunch of people that are waiting around for a long. They were. This was 3 months ago. We talked to these people, the Second Amendment folks. 3 months ago, we've canceled. We postponed. We tell them 6 o'clock, or and so they can drive to get
6
here.
o'clock, isn't it?
Yeah, they're after the peg, so it'll actually be 6:30.
Well, try to get the peg at 5:30.
I was, but I didn't go over too good. Or 5.
If the board wants to reschedule the meeting time to start at 5 or 5:30, we can do that. It's just that I can't just do that on my own.
Why don't we try and move it to 5:30?
5:30. Okay.
And then if Mr. King isn't comfortable with that, then I'm sorry, but we'll have to reschedule him.
One more thing. While we're going to that trouble having an evening meeting, are we limiting ourselves to just 1 or 2 topics? I'm thinking, why wouldn't we want to have a third one if it figures for pay for all the expense that we have to do this?
I suspect Sasso's going to be very long, and I think adding topics to that is not a good idea.
I think
we're trying to add them prior.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Okay,
Got it.
let's just stick with 2.
2? Starting at
For now.
5:30.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
5:30. Okay.
Thank you.
Now we're there, that'll keep their reserve time. And if Mr. King can't deal with that, then we can move him to the following week or whatever we need to do.
Okay. I'm sure he'll be, well, I'll ask him if he'll be fine with
Hopefully he understands. Yeah.
Yes.
And no offense, but Sasso was before him. I just got to emphasize that.
Alrighty. Was that it, Mrs. Schmelzer?
Yes.
Commissioner Boyce, up on the commissioner updates.
A lot of bills of interest. I'm not going to go through them all, of course, but let's see here.
Well, let me ask this before we even start with this.
I need 20 minutes, probably. Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. It's 10 minutes to 12. Do we want to go over for lunch? I need 5 minutes. So if you're going to be 20 minutes, we're probably going to be 15 minutes late. Is everyone okay with that, or do we want to meet after lunch? We do have a 2 o'clock workshop.
I'm fine either way.
I'm fine to stay.
I'm fine, but what about JJ?
JJ, you're good? Council?
Back from lunch at 1:15.
Right, yeah.
He still gets an hour lunch? Okay.
You'll still have your hour lunch, yes. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you. Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal. These two, though, have got some great exposure around the entire state, and I'm proud that this is in the Ruralite a month ago. March 2019. And they're just recognized as being very effective, very productive legislators. And the pilot had an excellent article 10 days ago, 2 weeks, that showed the different bills that David Brock Smith have. You know, sometimes they try and have a marathon where they introduce as many bills as they possibly can, makes them look good. But Brock Smith's bills, so many of them, have life after the various, the primary deadline. So I'll go over just a couple of these, not just his bills, but there's some Senate bills here as well that are very pertinent and important to Curry County. Senate Bill 339 includes land use primarily for cultivating crops with definition of rangeland. Basically, that's an overproduction, or excuse me, overpopulation, I'm sorry, of elk in east of Central Oregon and in basically central eastern Oregon. And so Curry County might get some of those elk one of those days, but they're basically making it very tough on the ranchers there. And so I thought that might be of interest to Curry citizens. Senate Bill 931 establishes requirements for sending notification to State Forestry Department by operator, timber owner, or landowner proposing forest operation involving aerial application of pesticides. AOC opposes, and the reason is that the Oregon Department of Forestry has a tremendous track record of properly notifying property owners, homeowners, well, it's not around homeowners, but forest stands, so that and they have to pick the perfect day, weather condition, wind conditions, what have you, and so that has been a little bit of an issue in Curry County, and right now it's in judiciary, and I have no idea what kind of life that might have. SB 1001 directs state court administrator to study issues relating to court records and report to Committee on Interim Committee of Legislative Assembly no later than such and such. And it basically comes down to who controls the record, the state or the local district attorneys. AOC and the district attorneys support that bill. Senate Bill 978, the gun bill, I won't spend a lot of time on that. It's in judiciary, but that has a lot of Oregonians. There's been tremendous, I don't want to say demonstrations, but testimony and a lot of activity at the Capitol. People are afraid that their gun rights are going to be taken away. And when you read this bill and the people that are behind it, it is reason for some reasonable concern. Director Smelzer put this on my desk not too long ago, House Bill 2420. Carried over from the 410 agenda, requires that municipal building officials be employed by municipality or council governments or under intergovernmental agreement. Basically, this limits the authority of the small cities and the counties to hire their own. And it has that state label that would be very expensive generally for the counties and the cities. And so I think at some point we might want to write a letter in opposition to that. AOC also opposes that, Association of Oregon Counties, of course. House Bill 3118, the Cougar Bill, I'll spare reading just even the short paragraph, but once again, we have double the cougar population as Oregon. We should have. Some of the rural counties are really supporting this bill to control those populations, and in conjunction, of course, with the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. They eat 1 deer a week. They have cubs that eat 2 deer a week. And then the elk population that eat the ground fuels that bring us the mega fires. So right now it has without recommendation as to passage, and it's referred to the Rules Committee. This is a big one, House Bill, and this is David Brock Smith's bill, House Bill 2365, sudden oak death. AOC supports, and we almost had unanimous on that, I'm proud to say, with the board. The writers, though, the language they used was pest management. Well, this has nothing to do with pests, it's a pathogen, so I'll bring you up to date on that more, but that's a lot of money to hopefully do away with the original strain of, to manage the original strain and do away with the European strain. It still is isolated in Curry County. The quarantine area is not necessarily growing, but I don't miss a meeting on any of those with the task force. It's incredibly important for the county. House Bill 2841, fish bill. I'll spare you on that one. It's manage or protect described fish and wildlife species. Oregon's starting to figure it out. Both political sides are starting to figure out what we got at risk with our fish. 2378, that's our bill. And as you said, it passed with an overwhelming majority. The support of Joe County is just, I'm not surprised, but incredibly thankful for. And then the 2379, no, I'll skip that one. But we do have the incubator bill. We also have the sediment bill, the study, the amount of aggregate that's coming down the river during the wintertime. It's piling up underneath the Rogue River Bridge, and that is something that we're going to need some help on. House Bill 2020, the carbon policy, it's moving, and to the extent that'll affect, I'd like to make a report on that sometime, not today, but how that would affect our county, what it would do to fuel prices, what it would do to families, just transportation of food here would go up unbelievably. House Bill 2565 is $3.6 million. Each county is going to get $100,000, and it's basically designated to get an assistant for each of the county's emergency management coordinators. And I think that right now is it's going to the Senate. So that's That's something that a person that Jeremy Dumeyer can use, and so I think that's got a very likely pass. And then I'm watching the one with the Constitution on the Chief Justice Supreme Court determines that remodeling, renovation, expansion of court facilities. I want to get you a copy of that bill. I'll send it to Director Smelzer, and I think that's through Public Safety. The AOC committee there is supporting that bill. Senate Bill 941. Let's see. They all went in. They are pushing that 1.7 for the Curry Health District to support the opening of an emergency room, and that's doing very well. Doing very well. It went to Ways and Means. Two other bills that, oh no, I mentioned those, okay. So, a couple other things here. The Wolf Committee, I finally got a hold of the director's office. She put me in contact with Jason Barber, and I have that letter here somewhere. But it's not good news. Yeah, they just allowed it. Did you see it? Okay, so you're aware that they're not going to make an exception for Coos and Curry. Here it is. It's just a short paragraph. Anyway, at the bottom of the main paragraph, I can also add that I received several requests a year from county financial personnel. In speaking with Commissioner Boyce, I know you have a meeting coming up in the near future. Wish I had better news for you. So we're going to have to do our own Wolf Committee, and we need to get started on that right away, in my opinion, Mr. Chair. Cap and trade, I talked about that a little bit. And then on one of our citizens give testimony about a month ago, why did the Rogue Valley Forest Collaborative get $6 million for new forest management, and it's indirectly tied to the governor's forest council, or excuse me, fire suppression council, and primarily it's because they got a matching from Ashland. And so I'm going to keep working with Eric Hartstein. Courtney Schaff made a presentation at the AOC board meeting a week ago Monday, and she got me in touch with him, and so I'm hopeful that we can follow through it was David Barnes that made the request on why isn't Curry County getting this money, and I've been behind the scenes working on this over time, and so yeah, we deserve some of the same. We talked a little bit about the Curry consumption tax briefly. It's what I've called the 15-15 plan. I may not be able to report on this anymore, again, because I said earlier it's likely not to be necessary if that tourism bill passes through House Bill 3427. But the 15-15 plan is 15% for public safety, 15 for visitor promotion, 15 for county parks development, 15 for repay road fund reserves, 15% for administration and related, which would be 8% to the county, 7% to the businesses for collecting, economic development and housing 15% to harbor, Port Orford and Langless water systems combined would be 10%. So on the, yeah, I'm just hoping that tourism tax fails and we would still have a chance down the road. 2420 we already talked about. I want to give a quick report from Billy Williams, and I think if the people are listening, and after the sheriff's report today, this guy is absolutely tops, and so it's going to take a minute. It's 12 o'clock. I've sped this up to be 10 minutes, but it's the notes I took, and I'm doing some paraphrase, but mostly direct quotes from him. His job relating to the counties, the League of Oregon Cities, is a risk pool, helping the counties reduce their risk. The name of his presentation was Marijuana Moving Forward. The title really didn't represent his opinions necessarily. But he's been a U.S. attorney for 18 years, the U.S. Department of Justice. He has an office in Portland, Eugene, and Medford. They have 125 employees. Since 2012, Attorney Williams has chaired the Marijuana Working Group, 29 years as a prosecutor. Bear in mind, these are notes I'm abbreviating here, helping the public understand the power that his people have to investigate and charge citizens. Department of Justice has a very active civil rights team. Protecting Oregon's natural resources, environment, hate crime, state and local partners. He made the point Oregon is diverse. It's geographically the 9th largest state in the U.S., but his job is to reduce especially violent crimes. And you'll see how this relates to marijuana as I move here. Recovering citizen losses taken by criminals, power of Russia and China, stealing our technology, secrets, and financial crimes, of course. Make no mistake, Oregon has national and international drug traffickers. That is a direct quote. The huge opioid crisis epidemic, 40 years later, Big Pharma lobby lied about not being addictive. We know where that story goes now. He believes the public is also being misled, especially our youth, about the risk of addiction, and he mentioned, of course, marijuana. Oregon is marijuana friendly. Use here surpasses the national average by 2 to 1. He referenced, we're close to Humboldt County. Oregon is way overproducing. Going illegally to other states, commonplace. His involvement, the DOJ, Department of Justice involvement, emphasized we have a significant black market here. Now he's speaking for all of Oregon, but he's very familiar with Medford and the whole state. Cannabis industry affects cultural breakdown, our schools, cities, counties, law enforcement, tribes, and families. No question, it attracts the criminal element, and they all carry guns. I believe you, and we talked about 101, no surprise what comes over in the middle of the night, what could be coming over in the middle of the night. Compounded by the state underfunding their responsibility to combat. So that was a little bit of a jab there. That is true. OLCC, OSB, and OHA working very hard to battle, but only scratching the surface. Collateral costs, environmental and water degradation, public health and public safety. Many illegal grows on our public lands and forests. It's not going away. He is challenging everyone. Take the responsibility to review the studies. In some ways, the medical marijuana is a Trojan horse. He was quick to point out he's not an alarmist, but a problem solver. Many proponents are making a lot of false claims and vigorously pushing those claims, resulting in growing opposition to even the medical use. The other side is saying, okay, doesn't work. Very high levels of THC content. He made the point, this is not your Woodstock marijuana anymore. And then he says, pot anymore, he usually called it pot, but can relate to schizophrenia, long-term brain damage, emotional reactivity, many political, legal, and competing interests. Sometimes not about the facts, but people with differing views are shamed and attempts at silencing them. The high levels of THC can lead to substance abuse, well documented. And then he really emphasized, why does debate and dialogue matter? Talked about a youngster, I was telling Council Huddle this the other day, 11-year-old, his buddy spoke publicly and said, my friend comes to school high every day. So there's more. I can put this on my website. I think the primary thing is what's happened to the little growers getting squeezed out, the big companies coming in, the black market aspect. And he also, one more thing, Mr. Chair, 2 things actually. He suggested Googling smart approaches to marijuana. And then finally he said, I recommend the book Dreamland by Sam Quinones. Thank you, that's all.
All right, Commissioner Gold.
I've just got a couple of things here. I've set up a workshop for June 12th. That's when all the superintendents of school will be here, as well as SWAC, the dean up in down in Brookings, and also Patty Scott will be here. Also, the city managers have been invited, and at that time we will highlight all of their successes, because I think the districts can learn from each other. What are they doing to be successful in various areas? And there are some real good things happening. I've visited with all of the superintendents to discuss this. I've also discussed possible intern program, and we will be talking about that, and I'm going to be sending them some information on that program. But as far as the intern program goes, unless we have buy-in from the schools, it won't work. So that's what we're trying to get here. Then the other thing I'm going to discuss is the CTR recycling roll carts. They're going to be rolled out in the urban growth areas and also the Cape Ferrello area starting June 1st. And right now, CTR has to pay $88 per ton to get rid of their recyclables. Previously, they used to get $75 a ton from China, but China's no longer taking any of our recyclables. So we're going to be paying $3.79 per month, but they'll have smaller carts available so that folks won't have to pay as much. And also they're going to be putting out a mobile app for education on what's recyclable and so forth. That's it.
Well, I might take about 7 or 8 minutes myself here. This might be one of the longer commissioner comments I've had, but I want to talk about a concern that I have here in the county. And let me ask county council this. Is an ethics violation a crime?
I don't think so. They get reviewed by the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. They're not prosecuted, but there may be a overlapping area where something that is an ethics violation could be a crime. But I don't enforce crimes and I don't enforce ethics violations. So it's somebody else's expertise there.
Well, I think when I ran for this seat, everyone in the county was well aware that my wife and I stepped away from our business many, many years ago. And I want to clear this up so that everyone understands fully. My wife and I retired basically from our public position in '09. And we moved here having already built the house and formed a foundation called Dreams, Hope, and Faith Foundation. Dreams Hope, I was seated on the board as a founding director and seated on the board of Dreams Hope and Faith Foundation. It's a foundation to help kids that have had horrible starts to their lives as well as their families, to get them back on track, help them get back on track, and offer them services at no cost to them. Dreams Hope and Faith has always been funded through private donations, and it's always been a select group that are monthly donors on an annual basis, and then we also have occasionally some outside donors that'll just stop by and throw $100 a check in the donation can. Dreams, Hope, and Faith Foundation has never met its financial needs for the year. I'm not saying this to brag about it, but it is the facts. My wife and I have continued to support the shortcomings of that foundation personally. My wife and I have never, ever taken a dime of money from that foundation. My wife and I have never taken any available tax write-offs because of the foundation. We have never used our ranch in any way to prosper or any financial gain for us, any family member, or anyone known to us through that foundation. When I was seated in or elected in November, I announced to the board of directors of that foundation, which is a 501c3 legally formed through the state, that I would be stepping away from the board of directors of the foundation, and the day-to-day operations would, from that day forward, be given to my wife, Bonnie, and then we have also hired someone at the foundation at our own expense to help meet the shortcomings that she will face. This week, I was contacted through the state of Oregon that I have an ethics violation against me. It was brought because of my website, which is put up here through JJ in our office. And what it shows is what's called a hyperlink, and it highlights Dreams, Hope, and Faith Foundation. Now, there was no advertisement on this. It just says that what I just stated, Recently, I shifted gears. My wife Bonnie and I threw our energy into developing a nonprofit called Dreams, Hope, and Faith Foundation that benefits the children. I didn't say go there. I didn't say please donate. I just made a statement, a categorical statement. From that, this person has alleged that I am seeking profits through the foundation. I am using the county's website to promote a Christian foundation, that I am personally going to profit from this, or that the county's website is providing a platform for people to go to my foundation and donate money that would not normally be available, and that I can make gain from that. Not anything in this world is farther from the truth. Since this has been on our website, on the county's website, I have received no donation from anyone that is not the standard monthly donors that we have. We have not received a miscellaneous donation in Dreams, Hope, and Faith for the fiscal year of 2019. And it was really, really disheartening to me. I will read part of the complaint. Mr. Pash encloses a copy of the complaint. During this phase, it is a preliminary review. The law requires you to respond to it. And I have had to since contact the Government Ethics Commission and also file with the DOJ. The objective of this preliminary review is to determine if the cause of this complaint exists. By law, I am allowed to request, and I didn't need to because it was provided, the actual complaint. And I will read the complaint. Narrative: Commissioner Pash is using a county website to promote his personal business. There is a link to his website on the county's page. And the website asks for donations, which incidentally you have to click through 3 pages of my website to find the donations page. We are a very small community, and I am in the process of establishing a news organization for our local radio station, KCIW in Brookings. Since I will be working with Mr. Pash in my role as the KCIW news director, I would hope that you will understand my request to keep my name private regarding this complaint. And if something falls within your purview and you choose to follow up, I will, of course, be reporting on this, so I would like to be kept informed. The complainant is Lori Gallo Stoddard from Brookings, Oregon, and she claims to be the news director of KCIW. It saddens me that people in this county finally, I would hope, see that this board is trying to work together and get this county back on track, and you finally have, in my opinion, some commissioners that want to look to bring revenue into this county. And people are still wanting, it's like I want to say it's like an old crow that finds a carcass on the street, and he just keeps flying up and pecking a little bit at it every week until you peck the flesh off of something and they don't want to work anymore, because it's so disheartening to come to work because of all the negativity, and it drives our government in the ground. What Miss Stoddard failed to show everyone in her complaint is Miss Gold's website. On Miss Gold's website, it has a hyperlink for KCIW, and it hyperlinks her into an interview that Miss Gold did on the radio several weeks ago. When you open that page, the very first thing you see on that page is a great big button, and it says, please donate here. Now the difference is, if Miss Stoddard would have done her homework, she would have learned that under Oregon law, 501c3s are legal to post on a government website as long as the person posting gets no financial gain from that posting. The website or the foundation can get a financial gain, but the person that is posting it cannot. What Ms. Stoddard failed to realize is this is the illegal activity, because this is a privately held radio station run through donations and through a private company. And as far as I know, I do not believe it's a 501c3. I might be speaking out of turn, but in my brief inspection of it, I didn't notice it as a 501c3. And by her asking for donations through Ms. Gold's website, she is in fact in violation of Oregon law. And I don't mean Ms. Stoddard, I mean Ms. Gold, you could be brought up in an ethics violation for this because you're allowing it. I have been asked through the Board of Ethics that council look into this, and I don't know if you have yet, council, and you've had a conclusion on this, but I was told by the Board of Ethics that this should not be on Ms. Gold's website.
We'll take it off.
Oh, yeah.
So, Commissioner Pash, I have
It
not...
ain't simple anymore.
Thank you. I have not examined whether the posting on Commissioner Gold's webpage is an ethical violation. Again, those are investigated by Oregon Government Ethics Commission, the people who contacted you, and it's also it is my role to keep the county out of legal trouble on any level, but at the same time, I can only do what I'm aware of, and it was only brought to my attention very recently what's going on. And so for the record, and there was a suggestion that I review every posting on our website by everyone in the county, and I think that's a big task, but what I will intend to do is to share this information by a broadcast email and let everyone police themselves as best they can, but at least give them the guidelines. So that's my goal right now, is to put out a broadcast email to recommend everybody check their postings for hyperlinks to for-profit entities and disable them or remove them as best they can.
I'd like to conclude with this. This county for too long has had so much tearing at this board. And I again will offer the olive branch to this board, the failures of this board in the past, and let's move this forward and let's stop with all the negative stuff. Let's stop with simple, silly things like this in the community, and please try and help us to move this county forward to get our bills paid and to the best thing for the constituents of this county. And that's all I have to say. Council Huddle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to follow up with a couple of items of business just for housekeeping. We did have an exec session. I wasn't sure if we came out of exec session and that the board directed us to proceed as discussed in exec session, but my understanding is that's a consensus of the board.
It is.
Okay, good. And then I just had one notice. We had bidders on the Brookings Head Start project. Today I sent out a notice of intent to award on that project. All the bids came in above our budget, and the state law gives us the ability to negotiate with the lowest responsible bidder. That's Adroit Construction. They're mostly local, Rogue Valley firm. We had two bidders, Austin out of Grants Pass, Adroit out of Ashland, more or less. And again, we'll be negotiating with them and trying to bring back a contract for the board to award on Wednesday. We'll let the board know. So just wanted to have that, and I'll just put this in the record for JJ there.
Is that it, sir?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Adjourned.